When the mob boss fell for the waitress, Chicago burned for her. The match dropped, and Lena Carter's whole life caught fire in under 90 seconds. Everything she owned, every sketch, every cheap brush, every photograph of the mother she'd buried at 19, curled black against the ceiling of a third-floor walk-up in Pilsen. She stood across the street in a waitress uniform that still smelled like burnt coffee, watching sparks chew through the only home she'd ever been able to afford. And somewhere behind her, in the idling black SUV with the tinted glass, sat the man they set the fire for. The man who'd whispered her name like a prayer 3 nights ago. The man half of Chicago was already trying to kill. If you make it to the end of this story, drop a like and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far Lena's story travels. The diner on Ashland and 18th had a name nobody used anymore. The sign out front said Pearls in faded pink neon, but the regulars just called it The Place, the way people name things they don't want to think too hard about. It had been Pearls for 41 years. Pearl had been dead for 6. Her nephew ran it now, badly, and the coffee tasted like it had opinions. Lena Carter worked the 6 to 2 shift 4 days a week, plus Sunday mornings when the church crowd came in smelling like incense and hairspray. She was 26 years old. She'd been a waitress for 8 of those years. She was supposed to have been a painter for all of them. She tied her apron behind her back without looking, the knot automatic, and squinted out the front window at the January sky. It was the kind of Chicago morning that didn't bother pretending to be daytime. Gray on gray on gray, with the lake wind doing that thing where it came up Ashland sideways and found every gap in your coat. Her coat had a lot of gaps. She hadn't replaced it in 3 winters. Lena, table 4 wants more syrup. Table 4 can drown in what he's already got, Mateo. Lena. Fine. She grabbed the pitcher. Her sneakers squeaked on the tile. Her sneakers always squeaked because the tile was always wet, because the dishwasher leaked, because nobody was going to fix the dishwasher. That was the general arithmetic of her life. Things broke. Nobody fixed them. You carried syrup. Table 4 was a trucker she half recognized. He took the syrup without looking up. Table 7 was 2 city workers in orange vests. Table 12 was empty. Table 15. Table 15 was him. She felt him before she saw him, which was stupid, and she knew it was stupid, and she hated that it was true anyway. Adrian Vale had been coming in for 9 weeks. She'd counted. She didn't mean to count. She'd just noticed one Tuesday that she was counting, and by then it was too late to stop. He sat in the back booth by the window, the one with the crack in the vinyl that Mateo kept meaning to tape. Dark wool coat. Dark hair, cut close, silvering a little at the temples, even though he couldn't have been 40. A watch she didn't know the name of but knew the price of, in the general sense that it was more than her rent for a year. He was reading the Tribune. He always read the Tribune, who still read the actual paper. Morning. He looked up, smiled slow, like he'd been waiting for her to get there, which of course he had. Morning, Lena? Coffee? Please. Food? Whatever Mateo hasn't ruined yet. That's nothing, then. His smile widened a fraction. Surprise me. She poured his coffee. Her hand was steady. She made sure of it. She'd learned over 9 weeks how to make sure of it. Rough night? He asked. Why? You've got paint on your wrist. She looked. Cadmium red, a smear the size of a thumbprint, right where her sleeve had ridden up. She'd scrubbed that wrist for 10 minutes in the staff bathroom and missed a patch. It's nothing. It's not nothing. He tilted his head. What were you working on? Water tower. At night? From memory. From memory. He set the paper down. You paint water towers from memory. I paint a lot of things from memory, Mr. Vale. The coffee's getting cold. Adrian. The coffee's getting cold, Adrian. She turned before he could answer, because if she didn't turn, she was going to stand there like an idiot. And she had rent due on Friday, and the landlord had started leaving notes in the doorframe instead of the mailbox, which was never a good sign. Mateo caught her eye from behind the counter and raised one eyebrow the way he did. She gave him nothing back. Mateo was 32, recently divorced, and convinced that any man who tipped over 15% was either hitting on the waitress or laundering money. In Adrian Vale's case, he'd landed on both, which he announced roughly once a week in Spanish. He thought she didn't understand well enough. She understood fine. Her mother had been Puerto Rican. Her father had been a ghost. She'd grown up in a two-bedroom in Humboldt Park with a woman who worked nights at a hospital and a grandmother who worked days at a laundry. And between the two of them, she'd learned that exhaustion was a kind of love, and that love didn't pay for art school. Her grandmother had died when she was 17. Her mother had died when she was 19. The hospital had sent her a bill for $94,000 6 weeks after the funeral. She still owed most of it. "Order up," Mateo said. She moved. Chat. Adrian Vale left at 9:14 the way he always did. He left a 50 on a $12 tab the way he always did. He didn't wait for change. He never did. She pocketed the 50. She felt the weight of it against her thigh the rest of the shift. At 2 she clocked out. At 2:15 she was on the blue line heading back toward Pilsen, her bag full of leftover bread Mateo had waved at her instead of throwing out. The train smelled like wet wool in someone's cologne. She leaned her forehead on the glass and watched the tunnel lights strobe past, and thought about the water tower painting, which wasn't working because she'd lied to Adrian. She hadn't been painting it from memory, she'd been painting it from a photograph, and the photograph had been taken by someone else. And she was sick of painting other people's sight lines. She needed to get out more. She needed to stand under things. She needed a lot of things. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up that leaned faintly east, as if the building itself was tired. The stairs creaked in 3 specific places. The hallway smelled permanently like somebody's grandmother's arroz con pollo. The door had 2 locks, one of which worked. She let herself in, dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, crossed to the window without turning a light on because the light in the apartment was better without lamps. It came in slanted off the building across the street and hit the easel at exactly the angle she'd set up for. The water tower painting stared back at her. It was bad. "Yeah, okay," she said out loud, because her apartment was the only place in the world she didn't have to be polite. "You're bad." She made herself a sandwich out of the bread from Mateo and a slice of cheese that was older than she was comfortable with. She sat on the floor, she ate the sandwich. She thought about Adrian Vale's hands. She thought about them more than she wanted to. They were careful hands. That was the thing. She'd served a lot of men in 9 years of waiting tables, and most of them had hands that announced themselves. Big showy rings, or raw knuckles, or nails bitten down to nothing. Adrian's hands were quiet. Short, clean nails. A thin scar across the back of the left one, a white line like a comma, like somebody had almost finished writing a sentence on his skin and changed their mind. She'd caught herself twice, wondering how he'd gotten it. She hadn't asked. She wasn't going to ask. He was a regular who tipped well and read the paper, and she was a waitress with cadmium red on her wrist and $94,000 of dead mother debt. And that was the whole arithmetic. Except on Tuesday of last week he'd asked her what she wanted, and she'd said what like a person who'd never been asked before, and he'd said, "Out of any of it, if none of this was in the way." "What do you want, Lena?" And she'd stood there with a pot of coffee going cold in her hand, and she hadn't been able to answer. He'd let her not answer. That was the part she kept coming back to. He'd let her not answer, and he'd looked at her like the not answering was the answer, and then he'd gone back to his paper. She should have said a gallery show. She should have said to stop being tired. She should have said for my mother back. Instead, she'd said nothing, and he'd let her. And somehow, that had been worse. She finished the sandwich. She stood up. She picked up a brush. She started a new canvas. The canvas was still wet at 11:48 p.m. when somebody knocked on her door. Nobody knocked on her door. That was a rule. Her neighbors texted. The landlord slid notes. The pizza guy, the one time a year she ordered pizza, called up from the street. She froze with the brush in her hand and her heart jumping sideways. "Lena." She knew the voice through 2 inches of cheap wood. "How?" she said, because it was the only word she could find. "Do you know where I live?" A pause. Then, quietly, "Open the door, please. Adrian. Please." She set the brush down on the lid of a coffee can. She wiped her hand on her jeans. She walked to the door. She did not open it. "How do you know where I live?" she said again, through the door. "I'll explain. If you open the door, I'll explain. And if you want me to leave after I explain, I'll leave." "Why are you here?" "Because you're not safe." She laughed. It came out wrong, high, thin. I'm not what? Lena, please. She opened the door. He was alone. That was the first thing. He was alone, and his coat was darker at the shoulder, wet from snow she hadn't noticed starting. He looked like he'd been running. Adrian Vale did not look like a man who ran. You have 90 seconds, she said. I need longer than 90 seconds. You have 90 seconds. He nodded. He didn't come in. He stayed in the hallway. That detail she'd think about later, a lot. My name is Adrian Vale. I know your name. You know the one I give Mateo. You don't know the rest of it. He kept his voice low, conversational, the way you'd explain the weather. I run a construction and logistics company on paper. On paper, that company is clean. Off paper, it controls about 60% of the movement of certain goods through this city and has for 11 years. You can do with that information whatever you want, but I need you to understand it before I say the next part. She stared at him. The next part, she said. Her throat was dry. Somebody took a photograph of you 4 days ago, from across the street from the diner. It's been shown to people who should not have been shown it. I didn't know until tonight. I found out at 9. I've been trying to get here since 9. Somebody took a photograph of me. Of us. Of me looking at you. You were reading the paper. I was not, he said, reading the paper. Something cold opened in the center of her chest. You need to leave this apartment tonight, he said. I have a car downstairs. I have a place you can stay. I have people I trust, not many, but enough. I am asking you to come with me, and I am aware of how this sounds. You're aware of how this sounds. Yes. Adrian, Nicole. I know. You come to my diner for 9 weeks. I know. And you tip like a person who wants something. I know. And now you're telling me you're what? The mob? You're telling me you're the mob, Adrian? I'm telling you, he said very quietly, that I've spent 9 weeks making sure nobody knew I was looking at you, and I failed, and you are going to pay for my failure if you stay in this building tonight. She took a step back. He didn't take a step forward. That, again, she noticed it and filed it somewhere she couldn't name yet. I don't know you, she said. You don't. I don't owe you anything. You don't. Why should I believe a word of this? He was quiet for a second. Then he reached into his coat, slowly, and pulled out a phone and turned the screen toward her. The photograph on the screen was of her, taken through the front window of Pearl's. She was laughing at something, her head tipped back, the pot of coffee in her hand. You could see Adrian's shoulder in the corner of the frame. You could see his hand on the table, the one with the comma scar. Underneath the photograph, in a text thread, she couldn't read the name of somebody had written, "This her?" And underneath that, somebody else had written, "That's her. Do it clean." She looked at Adrian's face. He looked like a man watching a building he'd built with his own hands come down. Who is Do It Clean? She said. His name is Marco Benedetti. And what is it? Adrian didn't answer. What is it, Adrian? It's you, Lena. She put her hand on the doorframe because her knees had stopped working. Oh, she said, and then she didn't say anything for a while. She packed in 7 minutes. She didn't remember most of it later. She remembered grabbing the wooden box from under her bed, the one with her mother's rosary, and the last photograph of her grandmother and a lock of hair she'd cut off her own head at 16 for reasons she couldn't now reconstruct. She remembered grabbing a sketchbook. She remembered not grabbing the water tower painting because the water tower painting was bad, and she wasn't going to die next to a bad painting. Adrian didn't touch anything. He stood in the hallway the whole time. When she came out with a duffel bag over her shoulder, he said, "Is that all of it?" "It's all of it that matters." He nodded. He took the bag from her without asking, and she let him, and she was already ashamed of how easily she let him. They went down the stairs. The building was quiet. Mrs. Delgado's TV was on in 2B, the way it always was, blue light leaking under the door. The smell of arroz con pollo had faded into the smell of wet carpet. Lena touched the banister on the second-floor landing because she knew, suddenly, without knowing how she knew, that she was not going to touch it again. There was a black SUV idling at the curb. The windows were tinted so dark they looked painted. A man she didn't know was behind the wheel. He didn't turn around when they got in. "Drive," Adrian said. The man drove. They were 4 blocks away, stopped at the light at Halstead, when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She almost didn't look. She was trying not to have a full-body panic attack in the back of a stranger's car, and checking her phone felt beneath the occasion. She looked anyway. Habit. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Delgado. She was typing in the erratic all caps of a woman who was not sure where the shift key lived. Lena mija, are you okay? The building. Lena mija, the fire. Lena's head came up. Turn around. Adrian looked at her. Lena. Turn the car around. My building, Gil. Lena. Turn the car around. He looked at the driver. The driver said nothing. Adrian said quietly, Go back. One pass. Don't stop. The SUV turned. Lena pressed her forehead to the window like a child. They came up her street from the south, slow, and she saw the orange before she saw anything else. A pulsing, living orange that turned the snow on the opposite sidewalk into something that looked like wet amber. Her building was on fire. The third floor was on fire. Her floor. Her windows. People were in the street in bathrobes. Mrs. Delgado was on the corner with a blanket around her shoulders and her little dog shaking under one arm. A fire truck was trying to get down the narrow street, and a Prius was blocking it, and somebody was screaming at the Prius. Lena made a sound she didn't recognize. Keep driving, Adrian said to the driver. If you stop here, she dies in the next 10 minutes. Keep driving. The SUV kept driving. Lena turned around in the seat, against the seatbelt, and watched her apartment burn through the back window until the street curved and it didn't exist anymore. Nobody spoke for a long time. The SUV moved north, then east, then north again. Lena lost track of streets. She was not, she realized distantly, actually crying. She was doing a thing that looked like crying from the outside, but was mostly just her body leaking while her head did something else, something cold and methodical, like an accountant walking through a house doing inventory. The sketchbook. That was in the bag. Okay. The box with Mom's rosary. In the bag. The painting of the water tower. Gone. Fine. It was bad. The painting of her mother. Her mother's face, from memory, from the good days before the hospital that she'd been working on for 2 years and hadn't finished, that she'd been scared to finish because finishing it would mean admitting she couldn't see her mother's face as clearly as she used to. Gone. Her throat closed. Lena. She didn't look at him. Lena. Breathe. Don't tell me to breathe. Okay. Don't. Her voice cracked. Don't say my name like that. Okay. She put her forehead against the cold glass. The city moved past outside. Somewhere a siren. Somewhere a train. Somewhere, probably, a man named Marco Benedetti was eating dinner. How long? She said. How long what? How long have you been watching me? He was quiet. Adrian? 9 weeks in the diner. How long have you been watching me? A longer silence. The driver did not move. The driver had the stillness of a man trained not to hear. 7 months, Adrian said. She closed her eyes. Say that again. 7 months. 7 months. Lena. Before you ever walked into the diner? Yes. How? Does it matter? Yes, it fucking matters, Adrian. How? I saw one of your paintings. She opened her eyes. She didn't turn her head. She watched his reflection in the window. I saw one of your paintings, he said again, at a coffee shop in Wicker Park. You'd hung 3 of them, for sale. The one in the middle was a woman on a fire escape at night, and she was looking down at the street, and the streetlight was hitting her face wrong. It was hitting her from below, the way a streetlight would, and I had never seen a painter get that right before. Most painters light faces like they're in a room. You lit her like she was in a city. I stood there for a long time. You bought it. I bought it. Under what name? Not mine. Of course not. I had someone find out who'd painted it. I had them find out carefully. He stopped. I wasn't going to approach you. That wasn't the plan. I was going to buy the other 2 and be done. But then I drove past the diner one day and saw you through the window. And I thought, I'll go in once. And then I went in once, and it was... He stopped again. It was a mistake. The whole thing. I knew it was a mistake. I did it anyway. I kept doing it. And somebody was watching me while I did it, and now your apartment is on fire." She finally turned her head. He was not looking at her. He was looking out his own window, at his own reflection, and his jaw was tight in a way that made the comma scar on the back of his hand, resting on his knee, look paler than she remembered. "I am not," he said, "going to tell you that I'm sorry. I don't think sorry covers it. I think sorry is what you say when you bump somebody on the train." "No," she said. "No, it isn't." "What is it then?" She thought about it. It took a while. "I don't know yet," she said. The SUV turned off Lake Shore and up a drive she couldn't see the end of. There was a gate. The gate opened without anybody appearing to push anything. There was a second gate. The second gate also opened. The house, she couldn't call it a house exactly, and she couldn't call it a mansion either because it didn't advertise, sat gray and low against the trees, all stone and glass, the kind of building that looked like it had been there before the trees were and would be there after. The windows were dark except for one on the second floor, which glowed a low amber. The SUV stopped under a portico. Adrian got out. He came around to her side and opened her door before the driver could. He didn't offer her his hand. She noticed that too. "There's a woman inside named Marta," he said. "She's worked for me for 9 years. She's the only person in this house tonight besides us. There's a room on the second floor that's yours for as long as you need it. The door locks from the inside. The only key is the one you'll have. There's a phone on the nightstand. If you want to call somebody, call. If you want to call the police, call. I won't stop you. I won't be in the hallway. I won't be on the floor. Marta will be downstairs. I'll be in the east wing. You will not see me again tonight unless you come looking." She stared at him. "Why are you telling me this?" she said. "Because you don't know me, and you just watched your home burn because of me, and I am aware of exactly what kind of man it looks like I am." "What kind is that?" "The kind who would lock a woman in a house." She looked at the house. She looked at him. "Adrian." "Yeah. Are you that kind of man?" He didn't answer for a second. He looked, for that second, older than she'd ever seen him look. Not in the charming, silvering temples way he looked at the diner, but in the way a man looks when he's been asked a question he's asked himself too many times. "I don't know," he said. "I'd like not to be. I haven't tested it with anyone I cared about until now." "That is not an answer." "No, it isn't." She got out of the car. The woman named Marta was maybe 60, maybe 70, short and round, with her hair in a braid down her back and a cardigan that had been washed 1,000 times. She met Lena in the foyer with a cup of something hot and didn't ask what it was for. "Soup," Marta said. "You eat, then sleep. Tomorrow you decide." "Tomorrow I decide what?" "Everything." Lena took the cup. Adrian was already gone. She didn't see him disappear. He just wasn't there. Marta led her up a staircase wide enough for 3 people. The house was quieter than houses should be. Lena's sneakers made noise on the wood, and she felt stupidly embarrassed about it, like she was going to wake somebody. There was nobody to wake. The room was at the end of a hallway. Marta opened the door and stepped aside. Lena went in. It was a normal room. That was what struck her. She'd been expecting, she didn't know, something velvet, something gothic, a 4-poster bed with a dead man's crest. It was a normal room, a bed with a white duvet, a small desk, a window, a bathroom through a second door, a bookshelf with actual books on it, and on top of the bookshelf leaned against the wall, a canvas. She walked over to it without setting her bag down. It was hers. The woman on the fire escape, the streetlight hitting the face wrong, in the way Adrian had said from below, like a city. She'd sold this painting 7 months ago to a buyer who'd paid in cash through the coffee shop and hadn't left a name. She had stood in this room for the first time in her life, and the painting was already waiting for her. Something in her chest did a thing she didn't have a word for. Marta was still in the doorway. Lena didn't turn around. "Marta." "Yes, mija." "What kind of man is he?" Marta was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her accent softened the words. "He is a man," she said, "who carries too much, and he chooses what he carries. That is what I know. The rest you will have to see for yourself." She closed the door. Lena heard the soft click of it. She waited. She waited another beat. She went to the door and tried it. It opened. She closed it again. She locked it from the inside the way he'd said. She put her forehead against the wood. She started to cry, finally, properly, big, ugly animal crying, the kind she hadn't done since her mother's funeral. She cried until she was empty, and then she cried a little more out of a kind of muscle memory. She slid down the door and sat on the floor and held the cup of Marta's soup against her chest until it stopped being hot. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She answered, "Hello." A man's voice, not Adrian's. "Miss Carter, who is this?" "My name isn't important. I'm calling to let you know that the gentleman you're staying with tonight is a very bad man, and that you're in a very bad place, and that we'd like to help you." Her spine went cold. "Who is this?" she said again. "I'm calling from a concerned party. We've been watching Mr. Vale for a long time. We saw what happened to your apartment. We think it's a tragedy. We think you deserve better. We can get you out. Tonight. Safely. A different car. A different house. No strings. You only need to walk to the end of the driveway." She didn't say anything. "Miss Carter." "Yes." "Will you walk to the end of the driveway?" She stared at the canvas on the bookshelf. The woman on the fire escape. The wrong light. The face she'd painted from a memory of her own face in a bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. on a night she couldn't pay the electric bill. "No," she said. "Miss Carter, no." She hung up. She looked at the phone in her hand for a long time. Then she turned it off. Then she took out the battery, because her mother had been the kind of woman who didn't trust phones even when they were off, and she'd inherited the suspicion. She stood up. She walked down the hallway. The house was silent. She walked down the staircase. Marta was in the kitchen at the far end of the downstairs, her back to Lena, doing something quiet with a pot. Lena walked down a second hallway toward where she thought the east wing was, based on nothing but a guess. She found him in a room that looked like a library that had given up pretending. Books, yes, but also 2 screens and a laptop and a bottle of whiskey and a glass that had been poured and not touched. He was standing at the window with his back to her. He turned when she came in as if he'd heard her from the top of the stairs, which he probably had. "Somebody just called my phone," she said. He didn't move. "A man. He said he was a concerned party. He said you were a very bad man. He asked me to walk to the end of the driveway." Adrian's face did not change exactly, but something behind it did. "What did you say?" he said. "I said no." "Why?" She hadn't known she had an answer until he asked. "Because the man on the phone," she said, "sounded like somebody trying to be nice to me, and I have served a lot of coffee to men trying to be nice to me. And you—" She stopped. She tried again. "You've never once tried to be nice to me, Adrian. You've been a lot of things. You have not been nice, and the man on the phone was nice." He closed his eyes for a second. "Lena, I'm not saying I trust you. No. I'm saying I trust him less. Okay, I want to know everything. Tomorrow. Every piece of it. Who Marco Benedetti is, who you are, who I am to you, why there was a painting of mine in that room upstairs, all of it. And if I don't like the answers, I'm gone, and you're going to help me disappear somewhere neither of you can find me." "Yes." "Yes, what?" "Yes to all of it." She nodded. She was shaking, she realized. She had been shaking for a while. "One more thing." "Yes." "The painting. On the bookshelf. In that room. Why is it there?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because I bought it 7 months ago," he said, "and I didn't know where else to put it where it would be safe." "Safe from what?" "From me." She didn't understand that answer. She wasn't going to understand that answer tonight. She was going to understand it eventually, and when she did, she'd think about this moment. Standing barefoot on a rug in a house she didn't know, across from a man she didn't know, looking at a face that did not know yet how to be afraid of what was coming. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Lena." She went back upstairs. She did not sleep exactly, but she lay on the bed in her clothes with the lamp on, and she stared at the ceiling, and at some point around 4 in the morning, the ceiling stopped being a ceiling and became a kind of screen onto which her apartment played, over and over, in orange. Somewhere in the house, a clock she couldn't see chimed the hour. Outside the window, very far off, Chicago kept being Chicago. The low hum of the expressway, the occasional siren, the distant thunder of a freight train moving through the yards near Ashland. The same yards she'd walked past at 13 on her way home from her grandmother's laundry, not knowing yet what any of it was going to cost her. In the East Wing, Adrian Vale stood at his window and did not drink his whiskey. In a condo on the Gold Coast, Marco Benedetti took a phone call and smiled, briefly, and said, "Then we escalate." And in a small, clean room at the end of a hallway, in a house she had not chosen, Lena Carter, 26 years old, waitress, painter, daughter of a dead woman, granddaughter of another, deader, insomniac, survivor, for now, turned her face toward the canvas on the bookshelf, the woman on the fire escape in the wrong light, and closed her eyes. She woke up at 6:47 in the morning, and for 3 full seconds, she didn't know where she was. She woke up at 6:47 in the morning, and for 3 full seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then she did, and her stomach turned over. The light in the room was the wrong color. Her apartment had faced east, and her apartment had been gone for, she counted, less than 7 hours. This room faced north. The window was framed in some pale wood she didn't recognize. The duvet under her hand was too soft. The pillow smelled like a laundry soap she'd never bought in her life. She sat up. She was still in yesterday's clothes. Her sneakers were on the rug by the bed, tipped over where she'd kicked them off sometime during the night without remembering. Her mouth tasted like copper. The canvas on the bookshelf was still there. That was the part she kept having to confirm. The way you check a stove you already know you turned off. The painting was real. The painting was in this room. The man who'd bought it was in the east wing of this house, wherever that was. And her apartment, her mother's rosary, her grandmother's photograph, the painting of her mother's face she'd been too scared to finish, was ash. She made it to the bathroom before she threw up. There wasn't much to throw up. Mateo's bread, a sandwich from another lifetime, half a cup of Marta's soup gone cold in a cup she'd left on the floor. She knelt on tile that was warm, which she didn't understand until she touched it with her palm and realized the floor was heated. Heated. The floor. She almost laughed. She didn't laugh. She rinsed her mouth at the sink and looked at her face in the mirror and didn't recognize it, which was fine, because she wasn't sure she'd recognized it yesterday either. A soft knock at the door. "Mija." Marta. Lena wiped her mouth on the back of her wrist. "Yeah?" "Breakfast is downstairs when you are ready. No rush." "Is he down there?" A pause. "He is in his office. He asked that you come whenever you want. He said to tell you he is not going to knock on your door." Something about that, the specificity of it, the fact that he'd told Marta to say exactly that, made the hair on Lena's arms stand up, and she couldn't decide whether it was the good kind of stand-up or the bad kind. "Tell him," she said. "I'll be down in 20 minutes." "Yes, mija." "Marta." "Yes." "Is there," she felt stupid asking, "a change of clothes somewhere? I didn't pack a lot. In the closet, mija. He had some things brought. If they don't fit, we will fix it." Lena didn't open the closet for 3 minutes. She stood in the middle of the room and looked at the closet door like it was a conversation she wasn't ready for. Then she opened it. It wasn't a costume. That was her first sharp relief. She'd had a fear, brief, specific, that she'd open the door and find a row of dresses she'd never wear, silk things the color of wine. What was in the closet was 6 or 7 hangers of normal clothes, a gray wool sweater, 2 pairs of dark jeans, a black button-down, a white one, a navy coat on the end that was not silk, not a statement, just warm. On the floor were 2 pairs of boots. One of them was her size. She could tell just looking. Somebody had done homework. Somebody had done homework carefully. She didn't know whether to feel seen or followed, and it took her a minute to realize those weren't opposites. She put on the jeans and the gray sweater. She left her hair down because brushing it felt like too big a commitment. She picked up her duffel bag on the way out because she didn't trust any room she could be locked out of, even one where the lock was on her side. The house was different in daylight. In the dark, it had felt like a held breath. In the morning, it felt, impossibly, like a house. A very large, very quiet house with a lot of glass and a lot of gray stone and almost no color anywhere except a rug here and a book there. She passed 3 paintings in the hallway and stopped at none of them. They were good. They weren't hers. The kitchen was at the back of the downstairs, opening onto a long room with a wall of windows that looked out over a lawn that ended in trees that ended, she knew without being able to see it, at the lake. There was no snow on the lawn. The lawn was bare and frosted, and the trees were black against a sky the color of cold water. Marta was at the stove. She didn't turn around when Lena came in. Eggs? I don't think I can keep them down. Toast, then. And tea. Not coffee this morning. You have had enough coffee in your life. That is objectively true, Lena said, and sat down at the island, and put her face in her hands for a second because the kindness of the remark had hit her harder than she was ready for. Marta set a plate in front of her, dark bread, good butter, a little bowl of honey, a mug of tea that smelled like something a grandmother would drink. Eat what you can. Marta. Yes. Why are you being nice to me? Marta looked at her for a long moment. She had very calm eyes. She had the eyes of a woman who had seen a lot and decided which parts of it were worth carrying. Because you are here, Marta said, and you are scared, and I have been scared in kitchens that were not mine. That is enough reason. Lena ate the toast. She didn't think she was going to, and then she did, and then she ate a second piece. Marta didn't say anything about it. Marta washed a pan. He is down the hall, Marta said finally, without turning. Last door on the right, the one that is already open. Lena set the mug down. Okay. Mija. Yeah. Ask him everything. I was planning to. Ask him twice. Lena nodded. She stood up. She walked down the hallway. Her sneakers were gone, replaced by the boots from the closet, and they made a different sound on the floor. A firmer sound. A sound that didn't announce poverty, and she hated that she noticed. The door at the end of the hallway was open, the way Marta had said. Adrian was at a long table with 2 phones face down and a laptop closed and a file folder open in front of him. He wasn't reading it. He was looking at the window behind the table, the same way he'd been looking at the window last night. He had on a dark sweater. He had not slept. She could see it in his face the way you could see a bruise coming up under somebody's eye. He heard her in the doorway and turned. Come in. I'm fine here. Okay. She didn't come in. She leaned against the frame. She crossed her arms. She was aware of how she looked, and she was aware that he was aware, and she did it anyway. I want to know who Marco Benedetti is. He nodded. I want to know what you did to him. Okay. I want to know what you do. Not the PR version. Not construction and logistics. I want the real version, in plain English, and I want it in the next 10 minutes, because in 11 minutes, I'm going to stop being able to listen. Okay? And I want to know, she said, and her voice almost cracked, and she forced it back into line. How long I'm going to be in this house? He considered her. Sit down, Lena. I don't want to sit down. Sit down because what I'm about to tell you is going to take longer than you can stand for. She sat down. She took the chair farthest from his, at the end of the table, and put her bag in the chair next to her because she wanted there to be more than air between them. He didn't move. He didn't get up. He didn't do the thing men did where they leaned forward to show sincerity. He stayed where he was, across a long stretch of wood, and he looked at her like she was a person whose attention he was trying not to waste. Marco Benedetti, he said, is the son of a man named Salvatore Benedetti who ran most of the west side of this city when I was 19 years old. I worked for Salvatore for 2 years. I was a driver. Then I was not a driver, and then I was somebody he trusted. And then Salvatore died in 2011 of a heart attack in his own kitchen, and the business did not go to Marco. It went to me. Because Salvatore had decided, at some point nobody can pinpoint, that Marco was not the one he wanted holding it. Lena didn't say anything. Marco was 23 when his father died. I was 28. For about 4 months after the funeral, Marco tried to be my partner. He was bad at it. He took money that wasn't his, and he made deals I hadn't approved, and he almost got 2 of my people killed in a warehouse in Gary, Indiana, because he wanted to feel important. I bought him out. I gave him more than he was worth. I told him to go to Miami. He went to Miami for 9 years. He came back in September. 3 weeks before I walked into your diner the first time. Her throat did something small and tight. Coincidence? She said. No. Say more. Marco came back because he found something, or he thinks he found something. Some people he's been talking to have told him there's a way to move me out and move him in. He's been putting a coalition together. 3 other families, most of them middle tier, one of them ambitious. They've been feeling me out since October. Small things. A shipment rerouted. A foreman at one of my sites who got an offer. A cop on my payroll who got a better offer from a guy she said had a Miami tan. Then why? Lena started. Why was your first move this fall to start coming into a diner on Ashland? That's a fair question. Answer it. He didn't look away. Because I'd been clean for 3 months. Clean. Off of it. Out. On paper. I'd started untangling. I'd moved 2 of my businesses fully legitimate in the spring. I was in the middle of a plan to do the rest of it inside of 3 years. I thought I had time. I thought... He stopped. He seemed to be picking his next sentence very carefully, the way you pick up broken glass. I thought that the version of me that walked into your diner was going to be the version I was when I walked out of all of it. I thought I'd already paid the part of the bill that was going to come due. I was wrong about that. You thought you could be a regular. I thought I could be a man who drinks coffee in a diner. And you thought you could be that man at my diner, looking at me, and nobody would notice. I thought, he said very quietly, that I'd been careful enough. I was wrong about that too. She sat with that. How'd they find out about me? A man named Devlin Ortiz. He worked, as a driver for one of Marco's allies. He drove past Pearl's on November 12th at 8:20 in the morning. He was on his way to drop something off in Bridgeport. He saw my car. He knew my car because 10 years ago he almost worked for me, and he didn't forget what I drove. He went around the block. He sat across the street for 6 minutes. He took 3 photographs. He sent 2 of them to the man who drove him. The man who drove him sent them to Marco. Why November 12th? Because that was the day you laughed. She stared at him. Excuse me? The photograph. The one I showed you last night. The one where your head is tipped back. That's the one they passed around. They didn't pass around the others. They passed around that one. Why? Because, he said, it's a photograph of me looking at a woman like she is not an employee. Her face went hot, and she was angry at her face, and she hated that he could see her face go hot. So she tried to make her face colder on purpose, which she knew wasn't working. Okay. I'm telling you this. Okay. Because you asked. Okay? Lena, keep going. He kept going. He told her what Marco had spent 10 years building in Miami. He told her about the 3 families. He told her about a man named Keene, who broke legs for a living in the 90s and now did strategy. He told her about the warehouse in Gary and what Marco had almost done there when he was 23. He told her the approximate number of people who worked for him directly, which was 81, and the approximate number who worked for the businesses he owned outright, which was 400 and something. He told her the approximate size of the problem she was now in the middle of, which he did not give a number to, but which she understood to be large. He told her about her apartment. The fire was set by a man named Danny Pierce. He's done work for Marco's people for 11 years. He's careful. It was not supposed to look like arson, and it won't. CFD is going to call it an electrical fault in a building with a history of electrical faults. Your landlord is going to be shocked. Insurance is going to pay out. Nobody died. Nobody was going to die. The fire was a message. A message that says what? A message that says we know where she sleeps. She was going to throw up again. She didn't. She breathed in and out of her nose. And if I'd been home, they knew you weren't. How? Because I got you out. How did they know I was out, Adrian? His jaw tightened. They had a man in the coffee shop across from your building. He watched you leave with me. He called it in. The fire started 12 minutes after I pulled off your street. They were not interested in burning you in your bed last night. They were interested in making sure you knew that next time they could. Next time. Yes. There's going to be a next time. Yes. She was quiet for a long time. Adrian. Yeah. Why are you telling me all of this? Because you asked. No. She shook her head. No. That's not why. You could have lied. You could have told me Marco's the bad guy. You're the good guy. Sit tight, sweetheart. We'll handle it. You could have been a lot of different men in this chair right now. Why are you telling me all of this? He looked at her. Because, he said, I don't want you to be a woman I lied to. She looked away. She started. I know how that sounds. You keep saying that. I keep meaning it. She pressed her thumb hard into the corner of her eye. Her head was starting to ache behind it. Okay, she said. Okay, then tell me the part I'm not going to like. Which part? The part where you tell me what you want from me. I don't want anything from you. Adrian, everybody wants something. He was quiet. I want you to stay in this house, he said, until I can put you somewhere Marco can't find you, which is going to take me a few weeks. I want you to tell me every name of every person you are close to in this city so that I can make sure nobody burns their apartment down too. I want you to not answer your phone unless it's me or Marta. I want you to... He caught himself. I want you to consider, at some point in the next few days, whether you want to know more about what the last 7 months have looked like from my side. If you don't, I'll never bring it up again. If you do, I'll tell you. That's the only thing I want that isn't survival logistics. The painting. Yes. The one upstairs. Yes. Why is it in my room, Adrian? He didn't answer for a second. When he did, his voice was different, lower. It had a tiredness in it she hadn't heard before. I put it there at 4 a.m. This morning? Yes. I thought, he said, that when you woke up, the room would be less... He stopped. Tried again. I thought you would wake up in a house that was not yours, in a bed that was not yours, in clothes that were not yours. And I thought if the first thing you saw was yours, it might be a little less bad. Adrian, I know how that sounds. Stop saying that. Okay. She stood up. She walked to the window. She stood with her back to him and looked out at the lawn and the black trees and a single hawk sitting on a fence post at the far end of the property, not moving the way hawks sit when they're deciding something. She couldn't decide if she was furious or if she was something else. The something else was worse. The something else was the thing that scared her. Who else knows I'm here? She said, without turning. Marta, my driver Hector, one other man named Ruiz who runs the security for the property. Nobody else. Not your... She searched for the word. Not your lieutenants. No. Why not? Because I don't know which one of them Marco has bought. She turned her head slightly. Not enough to see him, just enough to hear herself better. You think one of them has been? I think 2 of them have been. Do you know which? I have guesses. How do you sleep at night? I don't, mostly. Figures. She watched the hawk. The hawk watched something she couldn't see. The man on the phone, she said, last night. What about him? He wasn't Marco, was he? No. He was one of Marco's. Yes. How did he get my number, Adrian? Your number's been in 6 databases in this city since you signed a lease. It is not hard to get a waitress's phone number. It is not hard to get anybody's. That part is the easy part. The part that scared me last night was that he called you in this house. Why does that scare you? Because it means he wanted you to know he could reach you here. The hawk lifted. It went up into the black trees and was gone. What would have happened, she said, if I'd walked to the end of the driveway? A long pause. I don't know exactly, Adrian said. I have ideas. None of the ideas are good. Give me one. Lena. Give me one, Adrian. The best case version is that you end up in a different house, an hour out of the city, being asked very politely for information about me that you don't have, until somebody decides you've told them everything you're capable of telling them. The worst case version is that you don't make it to the different house. Both versions end the same way. I'm telling you this because you asked. I'm not telling you to scare you. You're telling me because I need to know. Yes. Okay. She turned around. She looked at him. He was watching her steadily, his hands flat on the table, and she realized suddenly that he had not once in this conversation tried to touch her. Not a hand on her arm when she sat down. Not a touch on her shoulder when she'd turned to leave last night. He had kept a distance so careful it was almost architectural. She didn't know whether that was respect or whether it was a kind of fear. What's your plan? She said. Which part of the plan? You said a few weeks. To put me somewhere. What happens in a few weeks? Marco will have made a move that I've been trying to bait him into making since September. Before you. Before the diner. I've been setting up a... He paused, and she could see him picking a word that wasn't the real word. A set of files. Records. Things I've been collecting for a long time. Things that, if the right people saw them, would end Marco's career in this city inside of a month. I haven't used them yet, because the second I use them, we're at war, and I've been trying to avoid war for 4 years. But, you've been trying to avoid war. Yes. A mob boss, she said, trying to avoid war. He almost smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I didn't say I was a peaceful man, Lena. I said I was trying to get out. Peaceful is not the same as smart. I didn't want war because war costs me things I've already spent too much to build. But now, he gestured vaguely, meaning her, meaning the fire, meaning the phone call. Now I don't get to avoid it. Because of me. Because of me. Adrian. Yeah. If I weren't here, if you'd never come into the diner, would Marco still be coming for you? Yes. Sure? Yes, he came back to Chicago to come for me. You were an accelerant. You were not the fire. She nodded slowly. That mattered to her. She didn't want it to matter to her. It mattered to her. I'm going back to my room, she said. Okay. I'm going to sleep, for real this time. I didn't last night. Okay? When I wake up, I want to eat something bigger than toast. Okay? And I want to see the rest of the house, not as a prisoner, as a person who's going to be here a few weeks. Okay? And Adrian. Yes. If you lie to me about anything, any detail, any name, any number, I won't yell. I won't fight. I'll leave. I'll take my chances at the end of the driveway. Are we clear on that? We're clear. Good. She walked back through the kitchen. Marta didn't look up. Marta was doing something with carrots, and she was doing it with the concentration of a woman who had decided 40 years ago that carrots were the part of her day she got to control. Lena paused at the doorway. Marta. Yes, mija. He told me the truth, didn't he? Marta stopped cutting. She rested her hands on the edge of the counter. I don't know what he told you, she said. You know what I mean. Marta was quiet for a moment. He tells the truth, she said finally, when he is afraid. He lies when he is comfortable. He has not been comfortable in a long time. You should listen to him now while he is afraid. Later he will be calm again, and it will be harder. Lena looked at her. That's the most unsettling thing anybody said to me since the fire, Marta. I know, mija. Thank you. Go sleep. She went upstairs. She locked her door. She looked at the painting on the bookshelf for a long time, the woman on the fire escape with the streetlight on her face from below, and she tried to remember what she'd been thinking when she painted it. She had been thinking that a woman could stand on a fire escape and look down at a street she couldn't afford to live on and still be a woman. She had been thinking about her mother. She had been thinking about a lot of things. She had not been thinking ever that the man who would end up buying the painting would be the reason she was standing in a bedroom in a stranger's house with her phone battery pulled. She slept. She slept for 4 hours. She dreamed briefly of orange, of a ceiling going orange, of a woman on a fire escape going orange, of an apartment building becoming the color of a candle and then the color of ash. And she woke up with her face wet and didn't let herself cry a second time. Twice in 12 hours was plenty. It was a little after noon when she came back downstairs. Adrian was not in his office. Marta pointed with her chin toward a room off the kitchen, a smaller room with a fire going and 2 couches and a low table. Lena went in. He was on one of the couches with a laptop reading something. He closed it when she walked in. He did not stand up, which she appreciated. Hungry? He said. Starving. Marta made soup. Of course she did. She sat down on the other couch. Marta appeared 3 minutes later with 2 bowls, set them down, and disappeared again like somebody who had been paid for decades to have the good sense to disappear. They ate. Neither of them spoke for a while. The fire did the thing fires do. Outside the window, the sky had gone a thinner gray, the kind that means snow is thinking about it. Question. Lena said, finally. Yeah. You said you were going to ask me for names of people I'm close to. Yes? How many names do you think there are? He looked at her. I don't know. Guess. I don't want to guess. Guess, Adrian. 5. There's 2. He held her eyes. Okay. Is that going to be a problem? No, that just means this is easier than I thought. One of them is Mateo, your boss. Yeah, he'll be fine. I own the building that his landlord rents to. I was going to have somebody park a car in front of the diner for the next month regardless. That's already done. Already done. Since about 9 this morning. Jesus. The other. A woman named Danny. She was my roommate at community college for a year. She lives in Humboldt Park. She's a nurse. She has a little boy. Full name. Daniela Mercado. Her son is Nico. He's 4. Adrian nodded slowly. He reached for his phone without looking at it, the way a man reaches for a pen during a meeting. She'll have somebody on her building by tonight. She won't see them. She won't know anything's changed. If anybody goes near her, we'll know inside of a minute. Is there anybody else? She thought about it. She thought about a man at the laundromat who always gave her quarters. She thought about the lady at the library who held books for her. She thought about her AA sponsor from 2 years ago, who she didn't call anymore, but who had saved her life twice. No, she said. Not in the way you mean. Okay? Adrian. Yeah. What about you? He looked at her. What about me? Who are your people? Who do you keep up at night worrying about? He was quiet for a long time. The fire popped. Somewhere in the house, Marta dropped something and swore in Spanish. There's a boy, he said finally. She waited. His name is Teo. He's 11. He's my sister's kid. My sister's name is Elena. She lives in a town you've never heard of, in a state you've never been to, under a name she changed when Teo was 2. She doesn't know what I do. She thinks I do construction. I send her money every month. I have not seen Teo since he was 6. He doesn't know I exist, in the way a kid knows. He has a photo of me in an album she shows him sometimes. An uncle. Your Uncle Adrian lives in Chicago. That's it. That's the whole story. Why? Because the day Marco's father died, the day I took over, I decided there were 2 people in the world who were never going to pay for what I was going to have to do. My sister. Her kid. I made sure very carefully for 11 years that nobody who worked for me ever knew they existed. Does Marco know? He doesn't. Are you sure? Yes. How sure? He looked at the fire. As sure as I was about you 3 months ago, he said, very quietly. Which is to say, sure enough, until I'm not. She felt again the thing in her chest that she didn't have a word for. It was not sympathy. It was not attraction. It was something between them, a third thing, a thing that was forming in the air and didn't have an owner yet. Adrian. Yeah. What happens if they find out about Teo? Then I stop playing defense. What does that mean? It means, he said, that I stop trying to get out clean. It means I use the files. It means I burn Marco's coalition down to the ground, and I take every loss I have to take to do it, and when it's over, we bury a lot of people who probably could have been talked out of all this if anybody had started earlier. And if they don't find out about Teo, he turned his head. He looked at her. And for the first time since he'd walked into the diner 9 weeks ago, she saw something in his face she would later think of as the real face. Not the face he used for strangers, not the face he used for her at Pearl's, not the face he'd used in his office an hour ago. Something older, something tireder, something that was, underneath everything else, a man who was very afraid and had been afraid for a very long time. Then I get out, he said, and you get out, and we find out what happens to people like us when nobody's trying to kill them anymore. She didn't answer. She didn't answer because there was no answer. She finished her soup. She put the bowl down. She watched the fire. And outside, the sky made good on its thinking, and the first snow of that second day began to come down over the lawn and the black trees and the fence post where, that morning, a hawk had sat and decided something she would never know about. Somewhere in Pilsen, a fire marshal was writing a report that blamed a faulty outlet. Somewhere in a condo on the Gold Coast, A man named Marco Benedetti was looking at his phone and smiling at a photograph of a woman with her head tipped back in a laugh and deciding very carefully what the next message was going to be. And in a house she had not chosen, on a couch she did not own, across from a man she still did not fully know, Lena Carter watched snow come down over somebody else's lawn and understood, for the first time and not for the last, that the life she'd had was over, and the life she was going to have had not yet been invented, and that she was the one who was going to have to invent it. She reached for her tea. It was cold. She drank it anyway. The snow kept coming down for 2 days, and then it stopped, and the silence it left behind was louder than the wind that had brought it. The snow kept coming down for 2 days, and then it stopped, and the silence it left behind was louder than the wind that had brought it. Lena counted the days in small, practical ways. Day 3, she asked Marta where the laundry was, and was told, very gently, that she was not to do her own laundry in this house, which was not about her, it was about Marta, who would be insulted. Day 4, she found the back staircase and used it instead of the main one, because the main staircase made her feel like she was performing herself. Day 5, she stopped locking her door at night. She didn't decide to stop. She just forgot one night and woke up the next morning and realized she'd forgotten. And then she didn't start again. That small thing bothered her more than anything else. Adrian did not push. That was the part that kept her unbalanced. She had been bracing, since the moment she'd walked into his office that first morning, for him to start asking for something, anything, even a little thing, an answer, a look, a hand on a wrist. He never did. He came and went. He ate meals with her when she came down for meals, and he didn't when she didn't. He answered questions. He did not ask them back unless she offered first. He was, in a way she had not expected and did not fully trust, a quiet man. She didn't trust quiet men. Her father had been quiet. On day 6, she finally asked Marta for paint. Marta nodded like it was a question she'd been waiting for, and by that evening there was a folding easel in the corner of Lena's room and a cheap roll of canvas and a plastic bin with brushes and tubes, most of the brands wrong, none of it expensive, all of it exactly what Lena would have bought for herself. She stood in front of the bin for a full minute trying to figure out how Marta had known to get the cheap kind. "I told her," Adrian said from the doorway, "that you wouldn't want the good kind." She turned. "How'd you know that?" "Because you had cadmium red on your wrist from the grocery store." She laughed. It surprised her. It was the first time she'd laughed since the fire, and it came out small and rusty, and he smiled a little. Not the diner smile, not the smile he'd given her over coffee, something smaller. "I'm coming in," he said, and waited. Yeah, he came in. He did not come far. He stood by the door where the rug started, and he looked at the easel and the bin and the canvas the way a man looks at something he is careful not to touch. "Hector's going to run you somewhere tomorrow if you want," he said, "out of the house. I was going to ask you today, but I didn't want to walk into this room to ask." "Where?" "Wherever you want, inside reason." "What's reason?" "North of Foster, west of Ravenswood. Not the south side, not downtown, not anywhere near Pearls. That's most of Chicago off the list." "I know. Can I go to the lake?" He considered it. "Which part?" "Montrose." "In a car?" "Out of the car. On the rocks." "For how long?" 20 minutes. "Okay." Just like that. Just like that. "You're not going to argue." "I was going to argue about 50 different things. Then I thought about it and realized if I say no to Montrose for 20 minutes, you're going to hate me by next Tuesday, and you shouldn't, not for that. So, Montrose, 20 minutes. Hector will be close. There'll be one other car you won't see. Wear the coat." He turned to go. "Adrian?" "Yeah. Thank you." He paused in the doorway. She couldn't see his face. "Don't thank me for taking you to a lake, Lena." "Why not?" "'Cause I'm the reason you can't go to the lake." He didn't wait for her to answer. He went. She heard his footsteps down the hallway, and then she heard the back staircase, which was interesting. She had assumed she was the only one who used the back staircase, and then she heard nothing. She painted that night, not anything of her mother. She couldn't make herself try. What she painted was the view from the window in this room, the lawn, the black trees, the fence post where the hawk had sat on her second morning. She painted it in a green she mixed by accident and decided to keep. She painted a hawk on the fence post that hadn't been there since that first morning because she had decided silently that the hawk had been important. Marta knocked at 11. She brought tea. She did not come in. Mija. Yeah. Don't stay up all night. Tomorrow you go out. You want to be awake. Okay, Marta. And eat tomorrow before you go. The lake is cold, and you do not eat enough. Okay, Marta. Good night, Mija. Good night. She stayed up until 2 anyway. She painted a streetlight into the corner of the canvas that didn't belong, and then she painted it out, and then she left it out, and she fell asleep with the easel still set up and her hands dark with green. She dreamed about her mother for the first time since the fire. In the dream, her mother was standing in Pearls, behind the counter, pouring a cup of coffee. Her mother had never worked at Pearls. In the dream, her mother looked up at her and said, "You didn't grab my rosary, baby." And Lena said, "Mom, I did. I swear I did." And her mother smiled in a tired, not angry way and said, Okay. I was just checking." When she woke up, she was crying without sound. She wiped her face. She went downstairs. She ate breakfast. Hector was waiting for her at 10. He was a short, broad man in his 50s with a gray buzz cut and a face that had been broken in 3 places at different times and reset slightly off each time. He did not talk much. He held the car door open. He did not offer his hand. "Miss Carter." "Lena." "Miss Carter." "Okay." The drive was 40 minutes in holiday traffic. She watched the city through the tinted window. She had forgotten, in 6 days, what the city looked like. It looked the same. That was the part that surprised her. Chicago had kept being Chicago while her whole life ended. The same guys shoveling the same sidewalks, the same bus pulling away from the same stop, a kid in a puffy coat kicking at a lump of snow on the median. Life going on, loudly and indifferently. She pressed her forehead to the glass and felt, briefly, insane. The Montrose rocks were cold and empty except for 2 dog walkers and an old man with a thermos of something steaming. Hector parked. A second black car she had not noticed sat down the way, on the other side of the harbor, with its engine running. She could not see the driver. She was glad she couldn't. She got out. The wind hit her in the face, the way only Lake Michigan wind hits. She walked out onto the rocks. She stopped 3 feet from the edge, because she was not stupid. The lake was the color of a bruise that had started to heal. She stood there. She breathed. She counted 4 breaths and lost count. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She had put the battery back in that morning, against her better judgment, because she had promised Danny she'd call today, and she had not called Danny. She pulled it out. It wasn't Danny. It was a number she didn't know. She almost didn't answer. She answered. "Hello." "Lena." A woman's voice. A voice she didn't recognize. Warm, older, unhurried. "Who is this?" "My name is Rosalind. I'm a friend of Adrian's, or I was, a long time ago. I'd like to meet you. Today. Right now, if you can." Lena turned her body slightly so the wind wasn't in her face. Hector was watching her from the car. She could see his shoulders go a fraction straighter. "How do you have this number?" "Adrian gave it to me." "He didn't tell me that." "I asked him not to. That was my condition. I wanted to see if you'd pick up for a stranger." "Why?" "Because I wanted to see what kind of woman he'd fallen for." Lena's throat did a thing. "That's a big word," she said. "It's the word." "Rosalind, I'm at a diner on Clark and Balmoral. It's called Sam's. I've been here for an hour. I'll stay for another hour. Bring your man Hector. He can sit at the counter. I'm in the back booth. I'm 64 years old, I'm in a red coat, and I'm nobody you need to be afraid of. But I'm somebody you need to hear, that's all." She hung up. Lena stood on the rocks for another minute. The lake did not help her. The lake never helped anybody, actually. People just liked to think it did. She walked back to the car. "Clark and Balmoral," she said to Hector. Hector looked at her. "That's not on the list, Miss Carter." "I know. I have to call." "Call." He called. He talked for 90 seconds in a low voice she couldn't hear. He listened. He said yes. He said, "I know." He said, "I know, boss." He hung up. "We go," he said. "He's not happy." "Yeah." "He says you should know he's not happy." "Tell him I heard him." I told him. Sam's was a corner diner with a window full of pies that were not real. Lena had walked past it twice in her life and never gone in. Hector came in with her, scanned the room, and took a stool at the counter without looking at her again. She was on her own. The woman in the red coat was 64 maybe, and had the kind of face that had been beautiful 30 years ago and was now interesting, which was harder and better. Silver hair cut short, a necklace of small dark beads, a paperback open on the table in front of her, face down, spine cracked. Lena couldn't read the title from where she stood. Lena. Rosalind. Sit down, sweetheart. You want coffee? No. Tea? No. You sure? Yes. Okay. Lena sat. She kept her coat on. She kept her hands on her thighs under the table. Rosalind looked at her for a long moment. She did not look at her the way men looked at her. She did not look at her the way women usually looked at her either. She looked at her like a building inspector looking at a house she was deciding whether to condemn. You look tired, Rosalind said. I am tired. Scared? Yes. Good. Good? You're not stupid. Stupid women don't get scared until it's too late. Scared is the right thing to be. Hold on to it. Lena did not answer. I knew Adrian's mother, Rosalind said. That is how this begins. She and I worked together in a flower shop on Taylor Street in the late 70s. She was 17, I was 19. She married his father when she was 19. She buried him when she was 24. I was at that funeral. I was at Adrian's baptism. I am not, to be clear, the woman in Adrian's life. I am not an ex. I am not a lover. I am not anything dramatic. I am an old woman who has known him since he was in a stroller, and I am telling you that because I want you to understand that I do not have a stake in how you feel about him. I have a stake in you not dying. Okay? He asked me to call you. Why? Because he cannot tell you what I'm about to tell you. He's tried. He has tried with me, over coffee, 3 times in the last 6 days. He can't get the words out, so I told him I'd do it. And he hated that, and he agreed because he knows I'm right. What is it? Rosalind set her coffee down. She folded her hands. Adrian is not, she said, a good man. I know. You don't. Not yet. You know a version of it. The version where he sits across from you in his office and confesses in that careful voice of his, and you get to think, well, at least he's honest. He is honest. That is one of the 2 or 3 true things about him. He is honest, and he is careful, and he is in love with you, and none of those 3 things are going to save you. Lena's mouth went dry. Rosalind, let me finish. I'm only going to say this once because it'll be easier if I only say it once. Okay? I watched that boy grow up. I watched him go from a kid who was too smart for his own good to a young man who was too smart for his own good. And at every junction where he could have gone one way, he went the other way. He did not have to take the job with Salvatore Benedetti. He chose. He did not have to stay on after the first year. He chose. He did not have to accept the business when Salvatore died. He chose. He has made every choice that has brought him to this table, and he has made most of them carefully, and a few of them he has made because he liked the way they felt. I need you to hear me, Lena. He has at times liked the way some of this felt. That is important. That is the part he will not tell you. He will tell you he fell into it, that it grew around him, that he tried to get out. All of that is true. What is also true is that there have been years of his life when he was very good at being who he is, and he knew he was very good at it, and he did not want to stop. And then, somewhere, he did want to stop. And then he walked into a diner on Ashland and saw you laughing, and he wanted to stop more. Lena did not say anything. She had nothing to say. I am not telling you this, Rosalind said, to turn you against him. What are you telling me it for, then? Because when the bad thing happens, and it is going to happen, sweetheart, it is going to happen soon, you are going to have to decide who he is on his worst day, not on his best day, not on the day he picked out cheap brushes for you, on his worst day. And I need you to make that decision with your eyes open, because if you make it with your eyes closed, he'll carry you. He will carry you all the way down. He won't mean to. He'll just do it because that's what he does. So open your eyes now. Look at him now. Decide now. Decide what? Whether you're in or whether you're out, because the middle is where people die. Lena looked at her for a long time. Did you tell him that? She said. Yes. What'd he say? He said, tell her. And then he said, and tell her I know. Lena looked down at the table. Somebody had scratched a heart into it with a fork a long time ago, and somebody else had scratched it out. Rosalind. Yeah. Are you telling me to run? No. Are you telling me to stay? No. What are you telling me? I'm telling you, Rosalind said, that you are not a waitress anymore, Lena Carter. That girl is Ash. You don't get to be her again. The woman who walks out of this diner is somebody else. You have maybe a week to figure out who she is before Marco Benedetti tells you who she is. Get there first. Lena felt something shift in her chest. Not a softening, the opposite. Okay, she said. Okay, what? Okay, I hear you. That's not the same as okay. I know. Rosalind looked at her for another long beat. Then she reached into her bag and took out a small white card. She slid it across the table. That's my number. The real one. If Adrian dies, or if you can't reach him, or if you stop believing him, you call me. Not his people, me. I'll come get you. I don't owe him that. I owe his mother that. Are we clear? Yes. Good girl. Rosalind picked up her paperback. She stood. Rosalind. Yeah. Who is he on his worst day? Rosalind paused. She looked down at Lena. For a second, the inspector face went away. What was under it was sadder than Lena had expected. On his worst day, Rosalind said, he's a man who decides that the thing he loves is worth more than the thing he promised. Watch for that. That's the one. That's the day you lose him, and you lose yourself with him, if you're not ready. She left. Lena sat in the booth for another 10 minutes. Hector didn't move from the counter. The waitress came by twice, and Lena finally ordered coffee just to stop being stared at. She didn't drink it. When she got back to the car, she sat in the back seat and didn't tell Hector to drive. He didn't ask. He waited. Hector. Yes, Miss Carter. How long have you worked for him? 17 years. 17. Yes. Would you tell me if he was lying to me? A long silence. No, ma'am, Hector said finally. I would not. That is not my job. But I have not known him to lie about the things he tells a person straight to their face. He lies about what he's doing. He does not lie about who he is. That's a fine line. Yes, ma'am, it is. Drive me back. Yes, ma'am. She didn't speak on the way. She watched the city. She watched the L train go past on an overpass, and she thought, absurdly, about her rent, which was not due anywhere now because she did not have an apartment. She thought about her tips, which she'd never collect, which Mateo had probably set aside in an envelope for her anyway, because Mateo was a good man under the complaints. She thought about the paint on her wrist from a week ago, a week that felt like a year. When she got back to the house, she went straight to Adrian's office. The door was open. He was at the window, the way he always was at the window. He did not turn around. Did she scare you? She did her best. She's good at her job. What is her job exactly? Being the only person I'm still afraid of. She closed the door behind her. He turned. Lena. She said you loved me. He did not flinch. I'm not saying it, she said. She did. I'm telling you what she said. Don't answer it. I don't want you to answer it. I want you to tell me something else. Okay. When's the bad thing coming? He looked at her. He weighed the answer. She saw him weigh it, and she saw him decide not to pat it. Soon. How soon? 3 days, maybe 4, maybe tonight. There's a shipment Marco's been trying to intercept for 6 weeks. It's moving tomorrow. If he takes it, we're at war by Saturday. If he doesn't take it, he'll do something louder by Monday, because the coalition needs him to. Either way. This week. What does war look like? For me, it looks like about 40 hours without sleep and a list of decisions I've been putting off for 2 years. For me, he paused. For you, he said, it looks like this house getting quieter. Marta will stay. Hector will stay. A third man named Ruiz you haven't met yet, you'll meet because he'll be the one you see if something goes wrong. I'm going to be gone for stretches. I'll tell you every time I go. I'll tell you when I'm back. I won't tell you where I've been because if you know, you become a target in a different way. There are going to be nights where I don't answer my phone. If I don't answer for longer than 6 hours, you call Rosalind. You don't stay in this house and wait. You call Rosalind. Ultimate. Adrian? Yeah. Did you already know she was going to tell me all of that? Yes. Then why did you let her? Because I wanted you to hear it from somebody who wasn't asking for anything. She sat down on the edge of the chair she'd sat in a week ago. She put her bag on the floor. She put her hands flat on her thighs. Listen to me, she said. Yes, I'm not going to tell you how I feel, because I don't know how I feel. And even if I did, I'm not going to put it in your hands right now. Not this week, maybe not ever. So you don't get that. You don't get a scene, Adrian. You don't get me saying the thing. You get this. You get me telling you that I am here. I am not walking out the end of the driveway, and I am not hiding in my room for 3 days waiting for a phone call from a dead man. You're going to tell me what's happening. You're going to tell me when it happens. You're going to let me be a person, not a painting, not a thing to protect. A person who gets a vote. Are we clear? He looked at her for a long time. We're clear. Say it back. I'm going to tell you what's happening. I'm going to tell you when it happens. You get a vote. Good. Lena? What? I want to say something. You said I don't get to. I'm going to say it anyway, and then we'll never say it again. Adrian? Rosalind was right. I'm not going to say the word. You don't need the word. You need to know that I have spent 11 years making decisions about other people's lives, and most of them I made without thinking twice. And every decision I've made since November 12th, I have thought about twice. That's what she was trying to tell you. That's the only thing I have to offer that's worth anything. I am thinking twice. I will keep thinking twice. If you want to leave, I will help you leave. If you want to stay, I will. He caught himself. I will be a man you can stand to stay with. That's the whole thing. That's all I have. She looked at him. Okay, she said. Okay? Adrian. Yeah? If you stop thinking twice, if there's a day, a moment, something, if you feel yourself stop thinking twice, I want you to tell me, right then, in the moment. You don't get to hide it. Okay? Swear it. I swear it. Good. She stood up. She walked to the door. Lena? Yeah. The paint. The one you started last night. In your room. Can I see it? She turned. When it's done. When it's done. Yeah. Okay. Adrian. Yeah. I'm painting a hawk. I know. Marta told me. Of course she did. She also told me I am not allowed to come in the room. Good. She went up. She painted. She painted badly for an hour, and then she hit the thing she was looking for and painted well for 2. When Marta brought dinner up, she ate it at the easel standing up. She went to bed at 11 and slept hard. At 2:47 in the morning, her phone woke her up. It was Adrian. He had said he would tell her. He was telling her. Lena. Yeah. It's happening tonight. Earlier than I thought. I'm going. I'll be back by 8 in the morning, or I won't be. If I'm not, Hector will come get you and take you to a second house. Marta is already awake. Do what she says. I love you. He hung up. She sat up in the dark with the phone in her hand. He had said it anyway. She was furious at him for a second, a clean, bright fury, because she had told him he didn't get to. And then the fury cracked down the middle like ice, and underneath it, there was nothing but fear, a cold, flat field of fear, because he had said it in a 2:47 a.m. phone call, which meant he had said it the way a man says it when he is not sure he is coming back. She got out of bed. She went to the window. The lawn was white. The trees were black. There was no hawk on the fence post because hawks don't sit on fence posts at 2:47 in the morning because hawks are smart. Somewhere south of her, a shipment was moving. Somewhere south of her, a man was moving with it. Somewhere south of that, Marco Benedetti was sitting in the back of a car he had paid too much for, smiling the way he had smiled at a photograph, and waiting. Lena put her hand flat on the cold window. Come back, she said, to nobody, to the glass, to a man who could not hear her. Come back, you stupid... Come back. She did not move from the window for a long time. The house around her was very quiet. Marta was somewhere below, awake. Ruiz was somewhere on the property, awake. Hector was somewhere in a car, awake. She was the only person in this whole arrangement, she realized, who had nothing to do. And nothing was the hardest job any of them had. She went back to the easel. She turned the light on. She looked at the hawk on the fence post. She picked up a brush. If she was going to be awake, she was going to be awake doing something that was hers. Not his, not Marco's, not the city's. Hers. She was going to be Lena Carter at the easel, painting a hawk at 3 in the morning, while men she did and did not know decided what kind of week she was going to have, because that was the only part of this that was still her own. She painted until the first gray light came into the window. Her phone did not ring again. At 7:52 in the morning, she heard a car in the drive. She put the brush down. She went to the window. It was Adrian's car. She couldn't see who was in it. She closed her eyes. She opened them. The car stopped. The door opened. He got out. He was walking slow. He was walking like a man who had been hit, and who was pretending he had not been hit, and who would probably keep pretending until Marta got her hands on him. His coat was wrong, too dark on one side. She looked at the dark side for a long time before she understood what it was. He looked up at the window. He saw her. He lifted a hand, a small, tired gesture. "I'm here." She did not wave back. She pressed her hand against the glass. He nodded, once. He went inside. Downstairs, she heard Marta start to cry. Quietly, the way a woman cries when she has been crying in private all night and has decided to do it in public now, briefly, because the worst didn't happen. And she heard Adrian say something low to her, and she heard Marta answer, and she heard the kitchen, finally, begin to sound like a kitchen again. Lena stood at the window. Her hand on the glass was green with paint. She did not go down yet. She would go down. In a minute. In 5. She would go down, and she would look at him, and she would see what shape the bad thing had left him in, and she would not cry, because she was not going to be the kind of woman who cried in front of him about something he had survived. She would go down. In a minute. For now, she stood at the window and watched the fence post, where, as if it had been waiting, a hawk had come back and settled and was looking at something she could not see and was deciding something she would not know about. She went down in 6 minutes. She went down in 6 minutes. She counted them. She gave herself 6. She used them to wash the green off her hand at the bathroom sink and to splash water on her face and to look at herself in the mirror for a moment without flinching. The woman in the mirror looked older than she had a week ago. Not tired. Older. There was a difference. The tired she recognized from 8 years of waiting tables. The older was new. She went down the back stairs. The kitchen smelled like coffee and something iron underneath it. Marta was at the sink, her back to the room, and her shoulders were doing the careful nothing of a woman who had decided not to keep crying. Adrian was at the island. His coat was off. His sweater was off. There was a white undershirt, and the undershirt was not white on the left side under his ribs. It was a color she recognized but did not want to name. And a second woman Lena had never seen before was on a stool beside him, with a kid open between them and a pair of tweezers in her hand. The second woman was maybe 50. Short, blunt gray hair. She had the arms of someone who had lifted heavy things her whole life, and the eyes of someone who did not startle. "You must be Lena," the woman said without looking up. "Yeah. I'm Irene. I used to be an ER nurse. Now I'm a very expensive favor. You gonna faint?" "No." "Good. Sit. Don't hover. Hovering people bump my elbow." Lena sat. Adrian looked at her. He had, she could see now, a cut along his hairline that had bled into his left eyebrow and dried there. A bruise was coming up along his jaw, ugly, not yet at its worst. His left hand was wrapped in a kitchen towel. Irene was working on his side. She was picking something out of him with the tweezers, and the something was making a small wet sound against a metal tray each time she dropped it. "How bad?" Lena said. "Not as bad as it looks," Adrian said. "That's the worst thing a person can say, Adrian," Irene snorted. "He's right, actually," Irene said. "It looks like hell. Most of the blood is not his. The part that's his is a graze along the ribs." She tapped the air above it with her free hand. "Which is bleeding a lot, but is not deep. There's glass in it. I'm getting the glass out. I will stitch it. He will be fine in 3 weeks. He will be sore in 2 days. His hand is sprained, not broken. I iced it in the car." The cut on his head is ugly and shallow, and I'll do it last because heads bleed dramatically and it upsets everybody. Okay? You want coffee, honey? No. Marta, pour her coffee. Marta poured her coffee without turning around. Lena took the mug. Her hands were steady. She was almost angry at how steady they were. Adrian. Yeah. Tell me. He looked at her. He looked at Irene. Irene did not look up. She can hear it, Irene said. I've heard worse. Hold still. He held still. He talked. He talked the way he had talked in his office the first morning. Flat, specific, not dressed up. The shipment had moved at 2 a.m. out of a yard in Cicero. Marco had hit it at 3:40, not at the yard, but 14 minutes later on a quiet stretch of truck route near the canal, which told Adrian two things. Marco had a man inside Adrian's logistics who had tipped the route, and Marco was comfortable enough in his coalition to stage the hit somewhere that wasn't traditionally his. The hit had been bigger than Adrian had expected. 7 men, not 3. 2 cars boxing the truck, a third car coming up from behind. Adrian had been in the third position escort, 2 cars back from the truck. Why were you in the escort? Lena said. Because I wanted to see his face, Adrian said, when he realized what was in the truck. What was in the truck? Adrian glanced at Marta's back. Nothing he wanted, he said. A dummy load. I moved the real shipment 8 hours earlier. The truck he hit had paper towels and 4 guys with vests on. He thought he was taking $15 million of leverage. He was taking paper towels. That was the plan. Then how did you get hit? Because I was stupid. Meaning what? Meaning I didn't account for him bringing a second wave. He has a kid working for him out of Miami, a nephew, Ruiz thinks. The kid was in a 4th car, a quarter mile behind, and he was there to pick off anybody who came out to watch. We didn't make him. That was my fault. He stopped. I was enjoying myself. For 30 seconds I was enjoying myself because I'd read him correctly, and I wanted to see it. That was long enough for the kid to come up on us. He put a round through my passenger window. The glass got me before the round did. The round hit a man named Esteban in the seat behind me. He stopped talking. Irene stopped working for a second. Then she kept working. Esteban, Lena said. Yeah. Is he? He's dead, Lena. She set the mug down. It took her both hands to do it without making a sound. How old was he? She said. 31. Did he have a wife, a little girl, a boy on the way? Adrian. Yeah. Look at me. He looked at her. His eyes were not doing anything she recognized. They were not wet. They were not angry. They were very far back in his head, like a man looking out the window of a building from the 3rd floor up, watching something happen on the street that he couldn't get down to in time. I need you to tell me, she said, that you are going to go see his wife. Today. Okay. Before anything else today, before sleep, before Irene is done. I'm going the second she finishes. Okay. I want you to come. Lena blinked. Me? Yes. Adrian, no, No, I'm not who she needs to see. She needs to see the woman I was in a diner about when her husband got shot. Adrian. I mean it, Lena. If I go alone, I'm the man who got her husband killed and came to apologize. If you come, I'm the man who got her husband killed and was too ashamed to come alone. Neither one is good. One is honest. That's not how it works. It is if I say it is. Adrian, you don't have to talk. You don't have to do anything. You stand next to me. You let her see you. You let her say whatever she wants to say to you. If she wants to slap me, I take it. If she wants to slap you, I take that too. I step in front. But she gets to look at us. Both of us. That's what I owe her. I'm not asking, Lena. I'm telling you what I'm going to do, and I'm asking if you'll come. Lena looked at Marta's back. Marta had not moved. Marta, she said. Marta finally turned. Her eyes were red, but her face was steady. Go with him, mija. Marta, go with him. He is right. It is an ugly right, but it is right. Go. Lena looked at Adrian. Okay, she said. Okay, I'll go. Thank you. Don't thank me for that either. Okay. Irene finished the stitches. She cleaned the cut along his hairline. She taped the knuckles on his sprained hand. She closed her kit. She wiped her hands on a towel and looked at Adrian and said, "You have about 6 hours before the adrenaline stops covering for you. Do whatever you need to do in the next 6. Then sleep. I mean it. Sleep, or I come back and sedate you. Understood? Lena." "Yes. If he tries to drive, hit him." "Understood." Irene let herself out the side door. A car Lena hadn't seen pulled up for her and pulled away. Adrian stood. He moved like a man pretending not to move, like a man who had been shot at. He pulled a clean shirt from a bag that had appeared on the counter without Lena noticing. He buttoned it badly with his good hand. Lena watched him miss a button and reach for it again and miss it again, and without saying anything, she stood up and stepped in and did the buttons for him. He stood very still while she did it. "Lena, don't talk. Okay?" She finished the buttons. She did not look up at his face. She stepped back. "Let's go," she said. They did not speak much on the drive. Esteban's widow lived in a small brick bungalow in a neighborhood Lena knew by the roof lines and the way the alleys ran. Not her neighborhood, but a cousin of her neighborhood. There was a plastic reindeer in the front yard that somebody had not taken down after the holidays. There was a child's bike on the porch, chained to the railing. There was a gray cat in the front window watching the street. The way cats watch a street when a household has gone wrong and the cat doesn't know why. Hector parked. Hector did not get out. Hector looked at Adrian in the mirror. "I'll be here, boss." "Thank you, Hector." "Boss?" "Yeah." "I'm sorry about Esteban." "Me too." Adrian got out. He went around to Lena's side. He did not open the door. She opened her own door. She stepped out. The morning was bright and cold, and the sky was a clean, raw blue. A plane went over, very high up, and she watched it for a second because she couldn't help it, and then she started walking. The woman who opened the door was 28 years old at most. She was in a hooded sweatshirt and leggings. Her hair was pulled back. Her eyes were so swollen they looked bruised. She had a little girl on her hip, maybe 2, maybe a young 3, who had the unfocused red face of a child who had been crying without understanding why. The woman saw Adrian. She did not say anything. She looked past him at Lena. She looked at Lena for a long time. "You're her," the woman said. Lena nodded. It was not a question. "Come in." "Anna," Adrian started. "Come in, Mr. Vale. Don't stand in my doorway. My neighbors don't need you on my porch." They went in. The house smelled like coffee and somebody else's food. A plate of empanadas on the counter that a neighbor had brought over, untouched. There were 2 older women in the kitchen who looked at Adrian the way women look at a man they are choosing not to spit on. Anna did not introduce them. She led Adrian and Lena into a small living room with a couch and a television that was off, and a photograph on the wall above the television of Esteban, in a white button-down shirt with his arm around Anna in a wedding dress, both of them laughing at something somebody had said off camera. Anna sat down. She did not put the little girl down. The little girl held onto her mother's neck and stared at Lena. Adrian stayed standing. Lena stayed standing next to him, a step behind, where she could be seen but where she was not in front of him. She had not decided to stand there. It had happened. "Say it," Anna said. "Your husband, don't start with him. Start with you." Adrian paused. "I got your husband killed, Anna," he said. "Yes. I made a decision last night. I made it for a reason. I can tell you the reason if you want to hear it. If you don't want to hear it, I won't tell you. You get to pick." "I don't want to hear it. Reasons are for you. They don't fix my kitchen." "Okay. What are you going to do? For you or for him?" "For me. There is a number. It's a large one. It's already been set aside. Not a favor, not a gift, a contract. Your name, not mine, not the company's. You can use it however you want. You can disappear with it. You can stay and use it. You will have a lawyer who answers to you and not to me. You will have a woman named Marta who will help you do whatever you want to do, if you want her help. You don't have to decide anything today. You don't have to decide anything this month. The number doesn't change. What's the number? He told her. Anna's face did not move. The older of the 2 women in the kitchen doorway made a small sound and put a hand over her mouth. "That's a lot of money," Anna said. "It is. Is that what my husband was worth?" "No." "Good answer. There isn't a number that's what your husband was worth, Anna. That's a number that means your daughter and your son never worry about rent or a bill or a school as long as they live. That's not what Esteban was worth. That's what I can do. They are not the same thing. I'm telling you that because you asked. Anna looked at him for a long time. Then she looked at Lena. You. Yes. What's your name? Lena. Lena what? Carter. Waitress? Yes. He told me that, my husband, 2 weeks ago. He said, the boss is in love with a waitress, and he is going to get somebody killed over it. I told him, he won't get you killed, Esteban. You don't work near him anymore. That was a lie I made. He believed me. He believed me because he wanted to. Do you understand what I'm telling you, Lena Carter? Yes. Tell me what you understand. Lena's throat closed. She made it open. You're telling me my apron got your husband shot? Yes. Okay. And that I don't get to tell you it wasn't my fault. I'm not telling you it was either. I'm telling you what happened. You do with it what you want. You're young. I was young when I met Esteban. Young doesn't save you. Lena nodded. She did not speak. She did not cry. She had made a decision on the drive that she would not cry in this house, and she kept it, but she could feel it in her face how close it was. Anna turned back to Adrian. You didn't come here to pay me. No. You could have sent the money with a lawyer. Yes. Then why did you come? Because I wanted you to be able to look at my face. That's about you, Mr. Vale. Yes, Anna, it is. Good. At least you know. She was quiet for a long moment. The little girl had fallen asleep on her shoulder, the way exhausted children fall asleep in the middle of terrible rooms suddenly and completely. Anna touched the back of her daughter's head without noticing. I want something else, she said. Name it. I want Marco Benedetti dead. Adrian didn't flinch. Neither did Lena. Lena noticed distantly that she had not flinched, and noticed the not flinching and filed it. I can't promise you that, Anna, Adrian said. I can promise you he won't die old. That's not the same thing. No, it isn't. Will you take him down? Yes. When? Inside of 2 weeks. Swear to me. He looked at her steadily. He did not do any of the things men do when they swear to things they don't mean. He did not put a hand on his chest. He did not look at the ceiling. He did not soften his face. I swear to you, Anna. If you lie to me, I'll find that waitress before I find you. I won't lie to you. Anna nodded once. That was the end. That was all of it. Get out of my house, Mr. Vale. Yes. And Lena Carter. Yes. Don't come back here. Not with him, not without him. You don't belong here. That's not cruelty. That's practical. Go live. If you make it through this, go live somewhere far from him. If you can't go far, go quiet. Do you hear me? I hear you. Good. They left. In the car, Lena did not speak. Adrian did not speak. Hector drove. The plastic reindeer got smaller in the side mirror. The sky stayed that clean, cold blue. 3 blocks later, Lena said, "Pull over." Hector pulled over. Lena got out. She walked to the corner. There was a little playground at the corner, empty, the swings moving slightly in a wind she could not feel on her face. She walked to the swings. She put her hand on the chain of one of them. The metal was so cold it almost burned. She threw up into a trash can on the corner. Adrian was not behind her. She could feel that he was not behind her, and she was grateful. Hector was watching from the car without appearing to watch. She rinsed her mouth with a bottle of water Hector had handed her through the window when she got out, which she had not noticed him handing her, which she had accepted on some kind of animal reflex. She walked back to the car. She got in. She sat. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Take us home." "Yes, ma'am." She looked out the window. Adrian looked out his window. They did not look at each other for 10 minutes. At some point, his good hand came to rest on the seat between them, palm up, not touching her, not asking to. She looked at the hand for a long time. She did not take it. She did not move hers away. The hand stayed. Hers stayed. The distance between them stayed exactly the distance it had been. It was enough. When they got back to the house, Marta put Adrian to bed the way you put a child to bed. He did not argue. Irene's threat was real. Adrenaline was gone. He walked up the stairs holding the banister with his good hand, and when he got to the top he paused and leaned against the wall for a second before going to his room. Lena watched him do it from the foyer. She did not offer to help. She did not sleep. She went back to her easel. She painted for 4 hours without looking at the clock. At some point around 6 in the evening, Marta brought her a plate and did not leave it on the desk. Marta stood in the doorway with it. Eat. Marta, eat. She ate. Mija, yeah, you did a good thing today. I didn't do anything. You stood next to him in that woman's house. You did not cry. You did not make it about you. That is something, mija. That is a thing. Not everyone can do it, especially not the first time. It wasn't my first time. What? Standing next to a man and not making it about me. I did that for my mother when she was dying. I did it for a year. Marta looked at her. Marta's face did something Lena didn't see her face do often. Then it is not the first time, Marta said, but it is the hardest time. Because the last time was a woman you loved, and this time is a man you haven't decided about yet. Lena did not answer. Marta left the plate. Marta went. She slept finally at around 10 that night. She slept in her clothes on top of the duvet with the easel light still on. When she woke up at 5 in the morning, the easel light was off, and there was a blanket over her that she had not put there, and she did not ask who had. She could guess. The next 2 weeks happened faster than she knew how to hold. Adrian went into something she could only call a siege. He did not sleep at regular times. He ate standing up or did not eat. He was in and out of the house. Hector was in and out of the house. A rotation of men she didn't know but who nodded to her with a specific, careful politeness came through for short meetings in the office and left again. The man named Ruiz, who she finally met on day 4, was tall and thin and much younger than she had pictured, maybe 35, with a quiet voice and a way of looking at a room that made her understand, without being told, that he would die for Adrian and that was not a metaphor. Marco did not make another loud move in that first week. That was not a comfort. Adrian said once, passing through the kitchen for coffee at 2 in the morning, "He's quiet because he's scared." Scared Marco is worse than cocky Marco. Cocky Marco does things you can see. What is scared Marco doing? Recounting his friends. Is that good for us? It is if the count doesn't come out the way he wants. Is it coming out the way he wants? Getting there. He drank the coffee standing up. He went back to the office. Adrian had, she learned slowly, over pieces of conversation at odd hours, been assembling for 4 years a collection of documents, recorded conversations, wire records, photographs, spreadsheets, a ledger somebody named Karpinski had kept for 11 years and thought was secret, that would, put in the right hands at the right time, put Marco and 2 of the 3 coalition families permanently out of business. Not prison, necessarily, because prison was not always the point. Business ending. Social ending. The kind of ending that made a man's own cousin stop returning his calls. "Why haven't you used it?" she asked him one night, in the small room with the fire, which had become their room by a kind of unspoken agreement. "Because once I do, I'm a different man. The man who uses those files is not the man who is getting out. He's the man who took a whole piece of the city down on his way out. People will know it was me. People who work for me now will know what I'm willing to do to people who were my friends. I will lose men I want to keep. I will keep men I don't want to keep because they will be afraid of me in the wrong way. The whole point was to get out clean. Using the files is not clean. What's changed?" He looked at her. "Esteban is dead," he said. "Clean is not on the menu anymore." "Adrian." "Yeah. Use them." "Lena, use them. You promised Anna. You promised me. A man is dead, Adrian, and I stood in his widow's living room today, yesterday, 3 days ago, whatever day this is, I don't know anymore. And I watched her not cry because she didn't have any crying left. You don't get to be clean anymore. None of us do. Use them." He was quiet for a long time. "If I use them," he said, "we don't win by default. Marco will have something like 10 days between when the information hits and when it finishes burning him. 10 days is a long time for a man with nothing to lose. He'll come hard. He'll come here. Not to the house. To us. Wherever we are. He'll burn through everything he has because he won't have any reason not to. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "Yes." "You're sure?" Yes. Okay. Okay, what? Okay. I'll use them. When? Thursday. She counted. That's 4 days. That's 4 days. Okay. He looked at her for a long moment over the rim of a mug he was not drinking from. Lena. Yeah. When this goes, and I mean the second it goes, Thursday morning at 9, you are going to a different house, not this one you haven't seen. Marta will go with you. Ruiz will go with you. I will not. I'll be in the city. I'll come when I can. If I can't, Ruiz gets you out of the country inside of 48 hours. Canada first, then somewhere else. New name, new papers, money set up. You will not be Lena Carter anymore. Do you understand? Yes. You can't tell Danny. You can't tell Mateo. You can't tell anybody. Okay. Will you do it? She looked at the fire. It had burned down to orange. She thought about the fire at her building. She thought about Anna's kitchen. She thought about her mother telling her, in a dream, "You didn't grab my rosary, baby." She thought about the woman she had been 2 weeks ago, standing in a bathroom in pearls, scrubbing cadmium red off her wrist. No, she said. Lena, I'll go to the other house. I'll do Marta and Ruiz and all of it. I'll go when you tell me to go. But I'm not leaving the country without you, Adrian. If Thursday goes bad and you don't come, I am not getting on a plane with my life in a duffel bag. I'm coming back for you. You can't. I am telling you I will. Lena, you can't. Then don't make me. Don't let it go bad. He stared at her. That isn't fair, he said. No, it isn't. Welcome to the last 2 weeks of my life. He almost laughed. It was a small sound, not really a laugh, but it lived in the same family. He rubbed his face with his good hand. He winced when his hand got near the stitches under his hair. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had gone into this thinking he knew what it was going to cost him and was finding out very late that he had been wrong about the price. Okay, he said. Okay, what? Okay. I won't let it go bad. Swear. I swear. Adrian. Yeah. What about Teo? His face changed. Elena and Teo moved the night before, he said. Wednesday. Not far. Just out of the state. I haven't told her yet. I'm going to tell her tomorrow. She's not going to take it well. She's going to say no 3 times before she says yes. She'll say yes by Wednesday morning. That's the one thing in this whole plan I am not worried about, because she knows me, and she knows that if I am calling her and telling her to move, she moves. Okay. Okay. They sat. The fire cracked. Adrian? Yeah. The painting. The hawk. Yes. What about it? It's done. He looked up at her. It's done? Yeah, today, this afternoon. Can I see it? She stood. Come up. He came up. He was stiff on the stairs. He did not use the banister with his bad hand, she noticed, the way a younger version of him would have. He went up carefully. She led him down the hallway. She opened the door to her room. The painting was on the easel where it had been for almost 2 weeks, and it was finished. And in the low lamplight it was either very good or very bad, and she didn't know which. Adrian stood in front of it for a long time without saying anything. The hawk was on the fence post the way the hawk had actually sat that first morning. The trees behind were the trees. The lawn was the lawn. But the hawk was not alone in the frame, the way the actual hawk had been. Off to one side, very small, at the edge of the composition, was a figure she had not planned to put in, a man in a dark coat with his back turned, standing at the edge of the trees, looking in the opposite direction from the hawk, looking at something outside the painting, not watching the hawk, not being watched by it, just there, at the same time, on the same morning, in the same unfinished cold. Adrian looked at the painting for a long time. That's me, he said. Yeah. You didn't have to put me in it. I know. Why did you? She thought about it. Because, she said, you were. You weren't in the yard that morning, but you were in the house. You were somewhere under this roof while I was looking at that bird. And the bird was deciding something, and you were deciding something. And I didn't know then what either of you was deciding. I still don't. So I put you both in, and I turned you around so that neither of you is telling me what you're thinking. He didn't answer for a second. That's the one, he said finally. That's the one that goes in the gallery. When you have one. Adrian. Yeah. I'm not going to have a gallery. You will. Adrian. Lena, you will. How do you know? He looked at her. Because, he said, I'm going to be alive on Friday. And when I'm alive on Friday, I'm going to start the rest of it. And the rest of it includes you having a gallery. That's not a bribe. That's not a promise to buy your affection. That's a fact about what I'm going to do with whatever time I have left on the other side of this week. She looked at him. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay. Be alive on Friday. That's the plan. Adrian. Yeah. Thursday. The thing you're going to do. The files. Yeah. I want to be there when you hit send. Lena. Not in the city. I know. I'll be at the other house, but I want to be on the phone. I want to hear you do it. I want to hear the second you do it. If I'm going to be scared for 10 days, I want the first second of the 10 days to be one I was in. He looked at her for a long time. Okay, he said. Okay. Lena. What? You're different than you were 2 weeks ago. I know. Are you okay with that? She thought about it. She thought about the woman in the mirror that morning. She thought about the way she had not flinched when Anna said, I want Marco Benedetti dead. She thought about the way her hand had stayed next to Adrian's on the car seat and not moved. I don't know yet, she said. Ask me on Friday. Okay. He looked at the painting one more time. He nodded once to it, as if to the hawk, and then he went. Lena stood in the middle of her room. The lamp was the only light. The woman on the fire escape on the bookshelf watched her from one side, and the hawk on the fence post watched her from the other, and between them she was a third thing, a thing that had not existed 3 weeks ago and did not yet have a name. And on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, Adrian Vale was going to send an email that was going to break his own world in half, and she was going to be on the phone when he did it. And she was not, absolutely not, no matter what, going to get on a plane without him. She turned off the lamp. She went to the window. The yard was dark. The fence post was empty. The hawk was somewhere else, doing hawk things, unaware that a woman in a house she did not own was counting down the days with it. 4 days? Lena said to the glass. The glass did not answer. She went to bed. The 4 days passed both too fast and not fast enough, the way time moves when you know a door is going to open and you don't know what's on the other side. The 4 days passed both too fast and not fast enough, the way time moves when you know a door is going to open and you don't know what's on the other side. Monday she packed a second bag. Not a full one. A bag for a woman who might come back and might not. She put the wooden box from her burned apartment in it. She had already packed it once in her life, in 7 panicked minutes, and packing it the second time was somehow worse, because she had the time to think about what she was and wasn't putting in. She put in a sketchbook. She put in one brush, a good one Marta had brought her on day 8 without saying anything. She put in the photograph of her grandmother she'd grabbed on the night of the fire, the one that had lived under her bed for 9 years and now lived in a drawer in a house she did not own. She did not put in the hawk painting. The hawk painting was staying on the easel. The hawk painting was, she had decided without telling anyone, the thing that was going to be here when she came back. A thing that made the coming back a fact. Tuesday, Adrian told his sister. Lena wasn't in the room for that call. He took it in his office with the door closed, and she heard his voice once, low, and then she did not hear it for a long time. And then she heard him say, Elena, I know, I know, I know, I know, 4 times in a row, which was how she knew his sister was crying. When he came out of the office, his face was gray under the bruise that had gone yellow along his jaw. And he poured himself a glass of water and drank it standing up at the sink and said, without turning around, she said yes. How'd you get her there? I told her about you. Lena blinked. You told your sister about me. I told her there was a woman I had lied to for 7 months by looking at her through a window, and that I was not going to lie to her anymore, and that part of not lying to her was not letting her watch me get my sister killed. Elena said, You brought her into this? I said, No, I brought me into her, and it's the same thing now. She cried. Then she said yes. Adrian. Yeah, I'd like to meet her. One day, if we get one, she'd like that. She'd say that? She said, if she's the reason you're finally doing this, I want to put my hands on her face one time. Lena laughed. It came out wet. That's a lot. She's a lot. That's why I kept her out of it. Wednesday, Elena and Teo were moved. Adrian did not tell Lena where. Adrian did not tell Adrian where, was the way he put it. Ruiz had picked the place, and Ruiz was the only man in the organization who knew, and even Ruiz had lied to two of his own people about the location. By Wednesday night, the boy Teo was eating dinner in a kitchen in a town neither of them had been to, under a name that was not Vale, and Adrian sat in the small room with the fire and stared at the flames for an hour without saying anything, and Lena sat on the other couch and did not say anything either, because sometimes the kind thing was to be there without making a person talk about it. Thursday morning came in gray. Lena was up at 5. She hadn't slept much. Marta was already in the kitchen, moving quietly, making coffee she wasn't going to drink. The bags were in the foyer. Ruiz's car was in the drive. A second car was on the street beyond the gate. A third car was somewhere she didn't know. Adrian came down at 5:40. He had on a black suit she had never seen him in. He was cleaner than he had been in 2 weeks. He was not shaking. He was not sweating. He was very, very quiet, in the specific way he had been quiet the night he'd come to her door in Pilsen. The quiet of a man about to do a thing he had spent a long time deciding to do. He looked at her in the foyer. "Go," he said. "Now, before I change my mind about letting you be on the phone." "Adrian, go, Lena, please. I need you in the other house before I do this. I can't be in the city before you're in the other house. Please." She went. The other house was an hour north, a cabin on a lake she did not know the name of, with 2 bedrooms and a fireplace, and a kitchen stocked like somebody had been told a family of 3 was coming for a week. There were no photographs on the walls. There was a landline. Ruiz tested the landline twice, nodded, and sat down in the kitchen with a book he was not reading. Marta put soup on. Lena put her bag in the smaller of the 2 bedrooms and came back out. "What time is it?" 8:42, mija." "Okay." She walked to the window. The lake was gray. There were no boats because it was February. A duck was on the shore doing something with its feet. She watched the duck without seeing it. At 8:58, the landline rang. She picked up before it finished the first ring. "I'm here," Adrian said. "I'm here. I have the email ready. It goes to 3 reporters, 2 federal prosecutors, and a man at the SEC who has been waiting for it for a year and a half. It also goes to every made man in Marco's coalition at the same time, so they know by noon that their boss is done, and so they have the rest of the day to decide whether to run or fight." "Okay." "I wanted to tell you one thing before I hit send." "Adrian, let me. 30 seconds." "Okay." When I walked into Pearl's the first time, it was because I'd driven past 3 Tuesdays in a row, and every Tuesday you'd been at the window. I didn't know your schedule. I was guessing. I kept guessing right. The 4th Tuesday I walked in, and I told myself I was going in because I wanted a cup of coffee, and that was the first thing I lied to myself about in a very long time. I'd stopped lying to myself, Lena. I'd spent 4 years training myself out of it. You made me start again in 90 seconds. And I didn't know your name yet. I need you to know that. I need you to know it because if this goes wrong in the next 10 days, somebody is going to tell you a version of me that isn't true, and I want the last true thing to be mine. Adrian. That was the thing. Okay, I'm going to hit send now. Adrian, wait. Yeah. I love you. Don't answer it. Hit send. A beat of silence. Okay, he said. Okay. Sending. She heard very faintly the soft plastic click of a mouse. It's gone. It's gone. Lena. Yeah. I'm going to hang up. I have calls. I'll call you at noon. I'll call you at 4. I'll call you at 8. If I miss any of those 3, Ruiz moves you. Do you understand? Yes. Lena. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For the last thing you said. He hung up. She stood at the window with the phone still pressed to her ear for a count of 10, and then she put it back in the cradle, and then she walked to the couch, and then she sat down, and then her whole body started to shake, and Marta came over and put a blanket around her shoulders without saying anything, and Ruiz looked up from his book and looked at her for a second, and then looked back down, not out of coldness, but out of the understanding that being watched would make it worse. Noon came. Adrian called. He sounded tired but alive. 4 came. Adrian called. He sounded more tired. He was on a highway. She could hear the road. 8 came. 8 passed. 8:01, 8:02, 8:05. At 8:07, Ruiz stood up. "Get your bag, Miss Carter." "Ruiz, give him a—" "Get your bag." "Ruiz." "Miss Carter, I am doing what he told me to do. Please do not fight me. I do not want to carry you out of this house." She got her bag. They were in the car by 8:15. Marta was in the passenger seat. Lena was in the back. Ruiz drove. He drove fast. The lake disappeared behind them. The road turned into a different road, and then a different one after that. Lena watched the mile markers go past without reading them. At 8:29, the phone in Ruiz's pocket buzzed. He answered on the first buzz. "Yes." Silence. "Yes, boss." Silence. "Yes." He looked in the rearview mirror at Lena. "He's alive," Ruiz said, before she could ask. "He's in a car. Not his car. They tried for him at the exchange on LaSalle. He got out. He's on his way. He'll meet us at the 3rd house." "The 3rd? There is a 3rd house, Miss Carter. You will not be in it for long. Don't ask me questions you don't need answers to." "Ruiz." "Yes." "Is he hurt?" A pause. "He didn't say." "That's a yes." "Miss Carter say?" "It's a yes, Ruiz." "It's a yes, ma'am." The 3rd house was a farmhouse 90 minutes further north, up past the state line, tucked back in trees behind a road that had not been plowed in 2 days. They got there just after 10 at night. There was a light on over the porch. There was a second car already in the drive. A man Lena didn't know was standing in the doorway. He stepped aside when Ruiz came up the steps and nodded to Marta and did not look at Lena. Adrian was on the kitchen floor, not dying. That was the first thing Lena registered, sitting, propped against a cabinet, with his jacket off and his shirt off, and a woman Lena didn't recognize. A different woman, not Iran, a woman with a medic's bag and a tight braid, working on his shoulder with her hands steady and her mouth tight. "Lena." "Adrian." She dropped her bag. She crossed the floor. She did not kneel. She did not want to be on the floor where he was on the floor because she did not want him to be on the floor. She squatted down next to him, balanced on the balls of her feet, and she put her hand on his good cheek, the one without the yellow bruise, and she held it there. "Hi," she said. "Hi. You were late. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm a little late, and you're going to be mad, but I'm here." "I'm not mad." "You look mad." "I'm not mad, Adrian. I'm furious. That's a different thing." He almost smiled. The woman working on his shoulder said, "Don't laugh, please. You'll pull the stitches." "Yes, ma'am." Lena stayed squatted next to him until her calves burned, and then she sat flat on the floor and didn't care. She held his good hand. He let her. The woman finished the stitches. The woman cleaned up. The woman left without a word, which Lena realized was how people in Adrian's life moved through rooms. Arriving on time, doing the thing, leaving without the conversation. Marta made soup. Marta was, Lena understood now, the actual center of gravity in this whole operation. Whatever the men thought they were doing, Marta was the one who kept them fed. They ate at a table that was not Adrian's in a house that was not Adrian's. He told her what had happened. He had sent the email at 9. By 10, the first story had hit online, a small one, Trade Press, an industry newsletter that covered shipping and logistics in the Midwest, the kind of thing normal people never read. By 10:30, the second one. By noon, a national politics site had picked it up, and by 3 in the afternoon, 2 local TV stations in Chicago were running segments with photographs of 3 of the men Adrian had spent a decade working with, standing next to politicians who were, that same afternoon, issuing statements about how they had never met. Adrian had spent the day moving. He had been in 4 different cars. He had met with 2 of Marco's lieutenants in a parking lot in Melrose Park and told them exactly, calmly, unsentimentally, what their next 12 hours were going to look like if they did not turn on Marco before midnight. Both of them had turned on Marco by 4. One of them had cried in the car when he called. Marco had gone to ground. But Marco had made one move first. Marco had sent 5 men to the exchange on LaSalle, where Adrian was supposed to meet a federal prosecutor to hand over an original hard drive that he had not sent with the email. The men had hit the exchange 2 minutes before the prosecutor arrived. Adrian had been hit twice. A round in the left shoulder, which had gone through clean, and a graze on the thigh that did not count, he said, because it had not needed stitches. The prosecutor had arrived after the shooting. The prosecutor had, by some miracle, been a woman who did not panic and who had accepted the hard drive out of Adrian's hand in the back seat of a car that was pulling away from the scene. The hard drive, Adrian said, was the part that ended Marco in court. The email had ended him in the city. The hard drive was going to end him in a cell. "Where is he now?" Lena said. "He's in a house on the Gold Coast." "Yours?" "Was mine. It's going to be his tomorrow morning for about 11 minutes, and then the FBI is going to be his. He doesn't know that yet. He's going to know that at 6:15 tomorrow morning, which is when they go in." "Adrian." "Yeah. He's done. He's done. Just like that. Just like that. And 10 days of being chased by men who have nothing to lose. And then done. Are you going to be okay for 10 days? Yes. Are we going to be okay for 10 days? He looked at her. Yes, he said. She realized then that he was not answering a question about survival. He was answering a different question, the question she hadn't meant to ask, which he had heard anyway. She looked down at the table. She didn't take it back. The 10 days that followed were the longest of her life, and also a blur, in the way that terrible waiting tends to be. They did not stay in the farmhouse. They moved twice more, because moving was the rule. Never sleep in the same bed on the same night twice. Marta was with them for the first 4 nights, and then Marta went to stay with a sister in Pilsen, because Marta had a life and Marta was not a soldier, and Adrian would not let her become one. Ruiz never left. Ruiz slept, when he slept, in an armchair in a hallway. And Lena stopped being able to walk past him without feeling it in her chest, because Ruiz was 35 and had a daughter and had never raised his voice at her once in 11 days. Marco's coalition came apart faster than Adrian had predicted. 2 of the 3 families quietly folded by day 4. The third held out until day 7, and then its capo was arrested at O'Hare trying to get a flight to Mexico City, and the capo's second-in-command called Adrian personally at 2 in the morning from a payphone, which Adrian had not known still existed, and cried for 6 minutes and said only, at the end, "We're out. Don't send anyone. We're out," and hung up. Marco himself was arrested on day 1, the morning after the email, in a bathrobe in his kitchen. He did not resist. He did not say anything on the way out, according to the reporter who had been tipped. He looked tired, the reporter said. He looked like a man who had been waiting. On day 9, Adrian walked into a federal building on Dearborn of his own accord, with a lawyer on one side and Ruiz on the other, and spent 11 hours in a room with 3 prosecutors, and came out at 2 in the morning without being arrested. What exactly he had given them, and what exactly he had gotten for it, he did not tell her in full. He told her a version. He told her a version in which he had handed over the remaining parts of the hard drive, and the names of 3 men above him that he had spent 11 years pretending not to know about. And in exchange, he had signed an agreement that turned the last of his businesses, the ones that were not yet clean, over to a trust that was going to wind them down under supervision. He was not going to prison. He was not going to be charged. He was not, technically, a cooperator in the sense that anybody was going to call him one out loud. But he was no longer going to be a man who owned anything in Chicago that did not have his real name on it, and he had signed over in the back half of a document most people would never see, an amount of money that had made his lawyer set down his pen and stare at him. "How much did you give them?" Lena asked when he told her. He told her. She looked at him for a long moment. "Adrian?" "Yeah. You gave them everything." "Not everything. Enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to be done." "And what's left?" He looked at her. He looked at the ceiling of the 3rd house. He looked at his hands. "What's left," he said, "is the construction business. The real one. The one that's been clean for 2 years. 4 buildings. 209 people on payroll. My sister's setup, which I can finally just admit is my sister's setup. Hector. Ruiz, if he wants to come with me. Marta, for as long as she'll stay. and a number of dollars that is not what it used to be, but that is more than you or I are going to spend in the rest of our lives put together. That's a lot to still have. It's a lot to still have, he said. If you're a man who didn't used to be a criminal, it is not a lot to still have if you're me. But it is what I have, and it is enough, and I am going to stop counting it, and I'm going to stop comparing it to what it was, because that is the part that killed Marco, and I'm not going to let it kill me. The war did not end on a specific day. That was the part nobody had told her about wars. She had been raised, she realized later, on movies, and in movies there was always a moment, a clean one, where the good guys walked down a street and the sun came out. In actual life, the war ended in pieces, at different times, for different people. For Marco, it ended at 6:17 in the morning in a bathrobe. For the capo at O'Hare, it ended at a gate. For Anna, whose husband Esteban was buried on the 10th day in a cemetery on the southwest side, it was still not over, and would never be over. And the number of dollars that had appeared in her account the day of the funeral did not end it either. For Adrian, it ended in a courtroom-shaped office on the 9th day at 2 in the morning. For Lena, it ended later, and she did not know it had ended until she was already on the other side of it. She knew it had ended when they drove back to the Greystone house. That was what she had started calling it in her head. Not Adrian's house, the Greystone house. On a Tuesday in March, 19 days after the email, and she stepped out of the car and felt all at once that nobody was going to shoot her in the driveway. It was not logic. It was body. Her shoulders came down for the first time in 5 weeks, and she put her hand against the car and breathed in cold air, and Adrian, who had just come around the front of the car with a duffel bag over his good shoulder, stopped and looked at her. "Lena, I'm okay. You're crying. I know, it's fine. It's the first time I'm okay. I'll stop in a minute." He put the bag down. He did not pull her into a hug. He stood a pace away, the way he had stood a pace away in her doorway on the night of the fire, and he waited. "Can I?" he said. "Yeah." He closed the pace. He put his good arm around her. His bad arm stayed at his side because it still was not fully his. She put her face against his collarbone, and she cried for about 90 seconds the way a person cries when they have been holding it for 40 days. He did not say anything. Nobody came out to ask if she was okay. Ruiz, in the car, looked deliberately in another direction. Somewhere above the house, a hawk went over, which she did not see. She stopped crying. She wiped her face on his jacket. "Sorry." "No." "Okay." "Lena." "Yeah." "Welcome home." "This isn't my home." "It is if you want it to be." "Adrian, later, not tonight, later, come inside." They went inside. 2 years went by. That sentence was true, and also a lie. 2 years did not go by so much as they were walked through day by day, step by step, by two people who had decided, separately and together, that they were going to see what the rest of their lives looked like without guns in them. Marco Benedetti pled guilty 7 months after his arrest to a list of charges that took a clerk 12 minutes to read aloud. He got 23 years. He would be almost 70 when he came out, if he came out. Lena did not go to the sentencing. Adrian did not go either. They were not by then people who went to courtrooms unless they had to. They watched a clip of it on the news that night together, from the small room with the fire. And when it was over, Adrian turned the TV off and said, "Okay?" And she said, "Okay." And that was all they said about it, ever. Anna took her children and the money and moved to a town in New Mexico that Lena had never heard of. She sent Adrian a letter every December. The letters were short. They were always the same 4 sentences, reported from different angles. "The kids are fine. The house is fine. I have not forgiven you. Do not write back." He did not write back. He kept the letters in a drawer. Danny, Lena's friend with the little boy, did not know for a long time what Lena had been in the middle of. By the time Lena could tell her, it was 8 months later, over coffee at a Starbucks in Humboldt Park. And Danny's face did a thing Lena had not seen it do since college. And Danny said, "You're telling me my son had a guy in a car outside our apartment for 2 weeks, and I didn't know?" Lena said yes. Danny said, "You could have told me." Lena said, "No, I couldn't." Danny looked at her for a long time. Then Danny reached across the table and took her hand. "Next time," Danny said, "if there's a next time, you're going to tell me at minute 1. There won't be a next time." "I hope not. But if there is, I will." "Good." That was the only real fight they had, and it ended in 2 minutes, and Lena drove home that night and thought for a long time about how the people who love you in your old life do not always stop loving you in the new one, and that this, too, was a thing movies did not prepare you for, because it was quieter than love usually got to be. Mateo sold pearls to a nephew of his own and opened a smaller place in Logan Square. Lena went to the opening. She stood at the counter and drank bad coffee and cried a little because Mateo had kept, on the wall over the register, a painting of hers that she had given him 3 years earlier as rent for hanging out in the diner on her off days drawing people. The painting was of pearls. He'd had it framed. "Your first gallery," he said when he saw her looking, and he had not been kidding. Elena, Adrian's sister, came to the Greystone house in April of that first year with Teo, who was 11, then 12 by summer, a quiet boy with his mother's eyes who asked Adrian on the second day of their stay, "Are you the uncle in the photograph or a different uncle?" And Adrian had said, "I'm the uncle in the photograph. I'm sorry I took so long to be him." Teo had considered that. Then Teo had said, "Okay," and asked if there was anything to eat because he was 11. And there was always a version of the important thing that was food. Elena and Lena got along carefully at first, and then warmly, and then the way sisters-in-law get along when they have decided, independently, that they are going to. Elena was a short, sharp woman who laughed loudly and said exactly what she meant. On the 4th day of their visit, she found Lena in the kitchen at 2 in the morning with a cup of tea and sat down across from her without being asked, and said, "Are you going to marry him, or what?" Lena had said, Elena. Elena had said, "I'm not pushing. I am asking. He is my brother. I have waited 11 years to meet a woman sitting at his kitchen table at 2 in the morning. I am allowed one question." Lena had looked at her tea. "I don't know yet." Elena had nodded. "Okay, I won't ask again." She had not asked again. She had not had to. Lena and Adrian did not, in fact, get married that first year. They did not live together, exactly, either. Lena kept an apartment in Andersonville for the first 18 months, a small one with good light and a landlord who did not know her name. And she went there 3 nights a week, and she kept her easel there. And she kept a version of herself there that was the Lena Carter who had always existed and was not going to disappear just because another version of her was also now spending 4 nights a week in the east wing of a house she had not grown up in. Adrian did not argue about the apartment. He paid for it once, when he thought she wasn't looking, and she caught him, and she said, "Adrian," in a voice he knew, and he had said, "Okay," and had not done it again. She paid her own rent after that. She paid it with money she made. The money she made was from paintings, which was a sentence she still could not say out loud without her voice doing a thing. The first real show was in October of the first year. It was a small gallery in Westtown owned by a woman named Pritchard, who was not Adrian's friend and had never been. Lena had found her by walking into the gallery with her portfolio, the way a person is supposed to, and Pritchard had looked at the portfolio for 45 minutes without saying anything, and had finally said, "I'll take 11 of these. We hang in September. We open October 5th. Are you available?" Lena had said, "Yes." Pritchard had said, "Good. Don't be late, and don't be precious about your prices." That was the entire conversation. On opening night, Adrian stood in the back corner of the gallery in a black suit and a gray tie, and did not try to get anybody's attention, and did not work the room, and did not once look at her in a way that told people he was her anything. He was a tall, careful man in the corner, and a couple of people who knew who he was looked at him twice, and he looked back at them once, and that was it. Lena wore a dress Marta had insisted on. Lena sold 9 of the 11 paintings that night. One of them was the hawk on the fence post. She had priced it 4 times higher than anything else in the room. It sold to a collector from Milwaukee whose name she did not retain and whose check cleared the following Monday. When the collector was gone, Adrian came up behind her and said, very quietly, "You should have kept that one." "I have the other one." "Which one?" "The one in my room at the house." He looked at her. "That's not the hawk." "No," she said. "It's better than the hawk." She did not show him for another year what she meant. What she meant was that she had been painting, in secret, for 14 months, a painting of her mother. She had started it in April of that first year, alone in the Andersonville apartment, on a morning when she had been thinking, for no reason she could name, about her mother's hands. She had started with the hands. She had moved up from there. She had not been able to finish it for a long time because she had been scared. The way she had been scared of the first one that had burned, that the face would come out wrong and she would lose her mother a second time in the losing. She finished it in July of the second year. She finished it on a Tuesday afternoon and she sat in front of it on the floor of her apartment and cried for an hour without sound. And then she washed her face, and then she put the painting in the back of her car, and then she drove to the Greystone house, and she took the painting into Adrian's office, and she set it against the wall, and she said, "Don't say anything for a minute." He didn't. He sat down on the floor across from it, with his back against his desk, and he looked at it. After a long time he said, "Lena." "Yeah." "Is that?" "Yes." "From memory." "From memory." He looked at it a while longer. "She's laughing," he said finally. "Yeah." "You painted her laughing." "Yeah." Because I spent 2 years of my life trying to paint her dying, and then I spent 2 years trying not to paint her at all, and then I thought—" Her voice almost went, and she pulled it back. "I thought I could just paint her like I actually remember her, which is laughing. She laughed a lot, Adrian. People forget that about sick people. She laughed so much. I was the one who stopped laughing first." He didn't answer. He stood up. He crossed the room. He did not touch the painting. He touched her, on the side of her face, very gently. "Thank you," he said, "for showing me." "Yeah." "Lena." "Yeah." "Marry me." She looked at him. "You're asking me this," she said, "in your office, standing in front of a painting of my dead mother." "Yes. I know how that sounds." "Adrian, I know how it sounds. I had a different plan. I had a thing, Lena. I had a plan with a— Never mind. I had a plan. Then you brought this in and I looked at it and I realized the plan was about me. And this moment is about her, and I am not going to ask you a smaller question than the one this painting deserves. So I'm asking now. Marry me." "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "I know. It's also the only one I've ever gotten." "I know that too." "You don't know that." "I assumed." "You assumed." "Lena." "Yes." "Yes?" "Yes, Adrian. Yes." He closed his eyes. His shoulders dropped the way she had seen them drop exactly one other time. In the driveway, after Marco, when she had cried against his collarbone. He pulled her in. He held her for a long time. Neither of them said anything. Her mother, on the canvas, laughed at them both. They got married 9 months later, on a porch in the same town where Elena now lived, under a sky that did not cooperate. It rained the whole morning and stopped, barely, 10 minutes before the ceremony, and then rained again an hour after. 12 people were there. Marta cried through the whole thing. Ruiz stood at the back and did not cry, and was, by all accounts from people who watched him, the saddest-looking happy man any of them had ever seen. Danny was the matron of honor. Teo, who was 13 by then, gave a speech about his uncle that made Adrian sit down in the middle of it because his legs did something. Lena's gallery, her own gallery, not Pritchard's, her own, opened that fall. It was in a building in Pilsen, 2 blocks from where her old apartment had stood. The old building was still there, rebuilt by the landlord after the fire, and sometimes Lena walked past it on her way to the gallery in the mornings. She did not go inside. She did not need to. The gallery was a long, narrow space with good north light and white walls, and a small back office where she kept the books, and a smaller room off the office where she painted on days when she could not bear to paint in the house or in the Andersonville apartment, which she still, even now, kept. She hung other people's work as often as she hung her own. The first show was a young kid named Devin, whose work she had found on Instagram, a black painter from the West Side who had been painting cityscapes at night for 5 years and had never sold anything for more than $400. She sold 8 of his that opening night, and 2 of them for more than she had sold any of her own for, and she told him after, over cheap wine in her office, "This is the first gallery show of your life. It will not be the hardest one." He cried. She did not. She had done her crying already. Adrian wound down the last of the dirty business the way he said he would. He spent a lot of the first 2 years in meetings Lena did not attend, signing papers Lena did not read. He did not tell her everything. She did not ask for everything. That was a rule they had made, almost without making it, and it worked because neither of them tried to break it. He built, in the end, the thing he had said he would build, a construction company that poured real foundations, that hired real workers at real wages, that had an office on Wacker with his real name on the door. It was smaller than what he had come from. It did not make him less. He was learning slowly that the size of a man's name was not the same as the weight of it. Sometimes at night, he still did not sleep. Sometimes he got up at 3 and went down to the kitchen and sat with a cup of tea he did not drink. And she would find him there in the morning with the cup gone cold in his hand. On those mornings, she did not ask. She made a new pot. She sat with him. She let him come back on his own time. Sometimes, at night, she did not sleep either. Sometimes she smelled smoke and had to walk through the whole house to confirm there was no fire, and only then could she lie back down. He never made her feel stupid for it. He had his own rooms to walk through in his head. They were not perfect. That was the thing she came back to, over and over, when people who had read about them in the business press wanted to know the secret. There was no secret. They were not perfect. He had done things he would not have to answer for in court, and would answer for quietly for the rest of his life. She had stood in a widow's kitchen in a coat. A dead man had not bought for her and had not known what to say, and would not know what to say if she went back tomorrow. They had each, separately, survived their own lives, and then decided to try surviving one together, and the trying was the whole thing. There was no moment when they stopped trying and started just being. There was only the trying, day after day, in quiet kitchens and loud galleries and long car rides and in between. The painting of her mother hung in their bedroom, on the wall opposite the bed, where it was the first thing Lena saw every morning. The hawk was gone, sold on opening night of the first show, long gone to a house in Wisconsin she would never see. But the other painting of the yard with the hawk on the post, the one Lena had painted in the first year to replace it, the one without a man in it at all, hung in the foyer of the gray stone house so that everybody who came in saw it. Visitors sometimes asked if the hawk was a pet. Lena always said no. It was just there one morning, she said, when I needed it to be. On the evening of this gallery's 1-year anniversary, she stood in the middle of her own space at dusk, after the last of the day's visitors had left, and before the small celebration she and Adrian had planned for the evening. The north light was failing. The walls were white. A painting of a woman on a fire escape, the very first one she had ever sold, that had been bought back by Adrian 7 months before the fire, and then given to her as a wedding present, hung now in the back corner of the gallery, next to a small plaque that said "Not for Sale." She stood in the middle of the room and thought about the woman she had been 4 years ago, in a diner on Ashland, with cadmium red on her wrist. She had been tired. She had been broke. She had been a daughter of dead women and a painter of things she couldn't afford to stand under. She had not known any of what was coming. She had not known, at the start of that November Tuesday, that by the end of February the life she thought she was living was going to be over, and that by the end of the next year the life she was going to have was going to be one she could not have described to herself on the night of the fire, because she did not yet have the words for it. She would tell you now, if you asked her, that the lesson was not love saves you. Love had not saved her. Love had not saved anybody. Esteban was still dead. Ana was still in New Mexico with letters she never sent, and letters she sent and meant every word of. Marco was in a cell. Adrian had bad nights. She had bad nights. They had all paid, and were still paying, in the small denominations of ordinary life. A bad sleep, a startled flinch at a car door slamming on the street, a Christmas without her mother in it for the 7th year in a row. What had saved her, if anything had, was that she had chosen. At every turn where she could have gone one way, she had chosen, the way Rosalind said Adrian had chosen all those years ago, except she had chosen the other direction. She had chosen not to walk down the driveway on the first night. She had chosen to paint a hawk. She had chosen to stand in Anna's living room and not cry. She had chosen to say, "I love you" over a landline 2 seconds before a man hit send on an email that was going to burn his own life down. She had chosen every single morning for 4 years to be Lena Carter, and to let Lena Carter keep meaning something, even after Lena Carter, the waitress, was gone. That was what she would tell you. She would also tell you, and this was the part she did not say out loud, because it was the part that was hers and nobody else's, but that she had painted her mother laughing, finally, because she had understood somewhere in those 4 years that the thing her mother had been trying to give her, working double shifts in that hospital, and coming home smelling like disinfectant and saying, "Every night, I love you, baby, go to bed," was not a bigger life. It was not a richer life. It was not a safer life. It was the permission to want one. It was the permission to be selfish in the tiny, holy way of wanting a thing, a real thing, a thing that was yours, and to not apologize for it, and to not be killed for it, and to not die before you got it. She had almost died before she got it. She had not. She turned off the lights. She locked the gallery. She walked out into the cold March air, which smelled the way Chicago smelled at the exact moment it decided to stop being winter, and she saw Adrian standing by the car in the dark, his hands in his pockets, his good shoulder a little higher than the other, the way it had been ever since LaSalle. He was looking up at the sign over the gallery door. Her name was on it. He was looking at her name. He heard her come out and turned. "You ready?" "Yeah." "You locked up?" "I locked up." "Lena?" "Yeah." "You okay?" She thought about it for a second. She thought about the woman in the mirror the morning after the fire, the woman with the older face. She thought about her mother laughing on a canvas in a bedroom across town. She thought about a hawk sitting on a fence post on a morning she had been too scared to sleep. "Yeah," she said, "I'm okay." Ice. He opened her door. She got in. He went around and got in the driver's side. He drove himself everywhere now, which had taken him a year to get comfortable with. He started the car. He pulled out into traffic. The streetlights came on as they went, one after another, the way they do in a city that is always, quietly, turning itself back on for you, whether you earned it or not. They drove home.